since it's such a niche industry, the pay packages would be very high. So Divyansh, you must be minting a lot of money, then?
Nothing like that, man.
Nothing like that?
Nothing. They're taxes.
He fits in the highest bracket.
I wish.
How much surcharge do you pay, Divyansh?
Globally, I think one company people would know, you would know well, would be Bumble.
For you, as in when you are preparing for interviews, I think what matters there is, A, they will test you on what you have written in your resume, and second is out of the box creative, something you have no idea about, and push you, give you an industry example where you have no idea about.
He had a course on sports, something related to sports, and Toto Wolff and George Russell come into the class. David Beckham came to a class, right? So those are the kind of experiences you also get. It's not all tangible. Some of these intangibles also you have to realize. He was telling me that he has a batchmate who is son of some prince of some country in Africa. Those are the kind of alumni that the network that you build. Right?
Hi everyone, welcome to Konversation with Kushal once again. If you are a PE enthusiast, if you want to get into private equity, if you want to know more about what exactly it looks like to work in a private equity domain, what are like the general salary ranges in this particular industry, how difficult it is to get into this industry, and what are the interview questions which you should prepare for if you are applying for these interviews, then this is going to be the perfect episode for all of you. We have called three people, Amandeep from Apax Partners, Divyansh from Blackstone, and Kartikey from Kedaara Capital, and we are going to discuss everything about their life as well. Thank you so much, Amandeep, Divyansh, and Kartikey for doing this. It's going to be super fun hosting all three of you.
Thanks for having us, Kushal.
Thanks, Kushal.
Thanks for having
Always happy to be here.
Yes, thanks. Divyansh, I think, is a third time guest. So thanks, Divyansh. Special thanks to you again. So guys, we'll start off with a quick round of introduction. Let's go alphabetically itself. So I think you're sitting that way itself. So Amandeep, Divyansh and Kartikey.
Yeah. So I was born and brought up in Amritsar. That's where I completed my schooling. Post that, I moved to Delhi for my bachelor's in economics from Shri Ram College of Commerce, University of Delhi. Straight out of campus, I got a job at Boston Consulting Group, where I spent 2 years. And post that, I joined Apax, which is my current job. I've been here for 2.5 years.
Wow, that's lovely. So one rule here in your answers is that you also have to give a non-resume oriented introduction. So you have to tell us something which is not there in your resume, or something which is like which is something which is not like included in your resume. So that is also something which you have to answer.
If not in my resume, I'll just tell some personal facts about me. I love pets. I have 2 dogs, and I love dancing.
Wow, that's lovely. And when was this, by the way? So SRCC, which year you graduated?
I graduated in 2019. Then from 2019 to 21, I was at BCG, and I started in Apax in 2021.
Got it. And how much did you spend in your entire education, and what was your first salary?
So in terms of what I spent on my education, the fees of these, because I studied University of Delhi, the fees is subsidized by the government. So annual college fee was 30,000. So around 90,000 is what I spent.
So this is
And
SRCC fee.
SRCC plus in addition to that, you have expenses because you live in PGs, hostels. Maybe that would cost you another 2 to 3 lakhs for 3 years, or maybe slightly more depending upon how you choose to stay. And then post that, I started BCG. So typically in MBB, the joining salary ranges from 15 to 20 lakhs.
Got it. So that's like a whooping return on investment for you. But yeah, so SRCC, after graduating, you got like BCG from SRCC itself.
Yeah. So through the placement cell of
Got
SRCC, they facilitate the placements.
So how many people usually get into consulting out of a batch of how many people at SRCC?
So SRCC, so there are 2 main courses in SRCC, economics and commerce. So commerce has around 100-150 people. BCom has 700 to 800 people. So it's a batch size of 900 to 1,000. Out of that, almost like 500 people apply for placements. And the consulting jobs with MBB and Parthenon,
What is MBB?
LEK. MBB is McKinsey, Bain, BCG, the top 3 consulting firms. And there's Parthenon, LEK. These are the 5 top, and there's 80 Carney. These are the top firms, consulting firms which come to the campus. And combined, these would roll out around 15 to 20 offers.
Oh, that's it out of 500.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's lovely. Cool. Thank you so much. Divyansh, over to you.
Hey, I grew up in Calcutta, did my schooling from there. Then, like Amandeep, I went to SRCC in Delhi. Had great 3 years. from college, I got the offer to work at Deutsche in the investment banking role. So while I had plans to do CA, but because I got the offer, I took up Deutsche, did investment banking for a year, started out in Bombay, then moved to London. But then come from a CA family, wanted to complete my CA, so I thought, and I was in the oil and gas team in London back then, did not want to do oil and gas for life. I was only 21, so I thought, I think I can take some time out to study again. Came back to Calcutta, completed my CFA and CA. Then right after CA, again wanted to get back to the corporate career, so did luckily got into BCG. With BCG, after a year of working at BCG, I always wanted to get into investing. So I think luckily the investing firms out here in Bombay hire a lot from the consulting set of analyst associates. So then applied across it all investing firms which I were hiring. Luckily got into Blackstone, and it's been over 3 years for me over here, and been going great.
So you have been modest since your childhood itself, because you use luckily again. So
No, I think it's not that. I believe it's, it takes sweat, determination, hard work, and luck.
Yeah.
I think it takes all of it, but each is very important. It's not just, you just can't be lucky, and luck will only be support you if you're working hard. So I think it's all of that had to go. But just I say luck is important because in India, everyone, you have to work very hard. It's because just the fact that we are so many, you can't like have a very laid back attitude of balancing work life quality and decent amount of hard work. That's not enough. You need to sometimes stretch also. And then you need luck, and then you get the things you want.
Which batch of SRCC you graduated?
2015.
Got it. And Deutsche happened after SRCC?
Right after.
From the campus itself?
From campus.
Got it. And usually, like, how many people get into investment banking roles from SRCC?
I think since it's almost a decade back, I think back then the number was, I think it was the only, and Nomura took 2 and Deutsche took 6. So there were 8 in a batch of 600 that got into investment banking.
So what would be like the total investment for your education in your undergrad and let's say CA, CFA, and what was your first salary, like the return on investment?
I think out of my entire, if I remove schooling, which will be similar for all of us, I think college, like Amandeep has already answered, was nominal 27 to 30,000 a year. And actually the biggest cost was the rent and lifestyle that you were living.
And I think given your lifestyle, it would be just massive, no?
No, that is very I mean, I used to go to college in 10 rupees rickshaws, dude.
Oh.
Not much.
Delhi North Campus, you can't have much lifestyle.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And but I think my actually biggest cost in my education is actually the CFA. I think all of us, even the audiences, know that CFA is not the cheapest course. In fact, CA is also much cheaper. It's and in a way you get your stipend in your articleship. But I think so roughly around 1.5 lakh spent on CFA. And CA, I can't give you a number right out of hack. Depends on the couple of tuitions also I took, which may cost around 15,000.
3.5 lakhs would be the number.
I think lesser than that. I just took 2 tuitions in the final, nothing for IPCC, so it was lesser than that.
I didn't know this.
So
all like 8 subjects, you've just taken 2 classes.
I took 2 classes.
Oh, wow.
I mean, because in my IPCC I had not taken any classes because with SRCC hours are such that you start 8:40 in the morning and you get done at 4:40, and then you do your co-curricular activities. So I started 1 tuition but just could not go and come. The commute was difficult. We did not have those video on demand classes back then. They were not very common. So I mean, I just got comfortable with the style of working, like not taking tuitions. But in the final I had some time, so I thought I'll take, but I just took a couple of them. Did not I think for theory subjects, and now with enough resources online, revision videos online, YouTube, I did leverage a lot of those that helped me. But I think I only took a couple.
Where did you do your articleship, by the way?
In Calcutta.
In a mid-sized
firm, because I had the Deutsche bulge bracket experience. I wanted to work in a mid-sized firm and get the local flavor as well, because a lot of my friends in the big four big four firms are telling me that you do the same work for 2.5, 3 years. And I back then had my dad's CA firm also to go back to, so I wanted to, back then my aim was to be a practicing chartered accountant and make the small size clients also very happy. That's the skill I wanted to learn.
So your dad never asked you to join his practice?
Actually, that was that's always a good plan, but just like I said earlier, fortunate to get into the career, got the opportunity to join BCG. If that were not the option, definitely that was my plan B. And then Blackstone also happened. So I think now I really like this. I really like what I do. I really like the people I work with, where I work. So he's also very happy with what I'm doing. So there's
Yeah.
no pressure.
Yeah, no, that's of course the way you have been growing in the last few years. I've watched your journey from 2018, I think, when I was clearing my CA finals, and I remember the first podcast that we did
Yeah.
when you were just getting into Blackstone.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
from that, I think the journey is commendable. So thanks for inspiring everyone as well. Kartikey, over to you.
Yeah.
Quick introduction.
So quite similar background actually. You don't have too much diversity on this panel. So born and brought up in Delhi. Did my schooling there. Did undergrad in economics like Aman, but from St. Stephens. Graduated from there and joined BCG like both of them. So worked there a couple of years across cities in India, different practice areas. I had that thought at that time to sort of get into investing, but I realized I was a bit out of my depth. I hadn't prepared much, and I thought I should go for an MBA at that point of time. So did my MBA from Ahmedabad and joined Kedaara right after that. So been in Kedaara almost 4 years now. It's been a lovely journey so far.
Got it, lovely. And what would your total investment on education be, excluding the schooling and the first salary?
Yeah, so Stephens, similar to what these guys said in SRCC again, very 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 economical sort of college. So about like whatever 30,000-40,000 in terms of the college fees, and I was staying at home, so I'm from Delhi, so I didn't have rent, etc. And again, BCG first salary, like Aman said, it's around. I was a bit few years before, so it wasn't as high, but like 15 odd plus minus. IIM Ahmedabad was a bit higher, so that was I think 20 odd lakhs.
This is for 2 years, right?
This is for 2 years,
Okay.
including the stay on campus, etc.
Okay.
Plus you'll have food, etc. So add a few lakhs, maybe a couple of lakhs there. And then I joined Kedaara, and the ROI would be like 4-5x
Right.
from IIM.
So tell me one thing. So I am Ahmedabad like 20 lakhs over 2 years. What would be like the total expense apart from the tuition and the stay? Like what would the total investment
Honestly,
be?
I have not done the math ever, because you do this math when you go for a foreign MBA and all, because there it's quite significant. But the only other expense was food, really,
Okay.
because everything else was on campus, and maybe you go out for a movie. Alcohol is not there in Ahmedabad, so you don't you don't end up spending there. But food and everything else. Maybe a couple of trips here and there, maybe 1 lakh, 2 lakhs.
Got it. So like, on an average like 2022 would be the number.
Yeah.
Got it. Fair. And out of like the entire batch, how many students were there and how many of them got into private equity?
Yeah. No, maybe I'll answer about Stephens also first.
Sure.
At that time, for example, Stephens is a much smaller batch, about a batch of 400. And within that, corporate roles, because, it's a very diverse pool. So you have, economics, history, English, physics, chemistry, everything. So people who look for these kind of jobs are really economics and maths people. So that's about 100 people applying for these kind of jobs. And, cross consulting firms, at my time, they would hire like 5-10 people. Today, the number would be much higher, I guess. But that time was about 5-10 people. At IMA, directly into investing, I think maybe 3-4 people would have gotten it directly into investing across VC and private equity. But today, many more of my batchmates are in private equity. But if you ask me directly, then maybe 3-4 people.
So that's it, 3-4 out of 400.
Yeah, most people go into consulting, banking.
Is there a split that, like, let's say more people get into finance from IIM Calcutta or lesser from?
Not really. Actually, I would
that's what
say
I've heard, but
that's a myth, honestly,
Yeah.
and some IIM Cal folks might get angered by this. But I believe more finance roles are available at IIM Ahmedabad, because if you think, for example, Kedaara only hired from IMA, Matrix Partners only used to hire from IMA. SAF used to hire only from IMA.
SAF is now Elevation. right?
Elevation now, yeah. At that time it was SAF. There are a bunch of other firms which, I remember, a friend got off campus at, this A91 that only hired from IMA. So, and even banks, while they may go to all, some banks only go to IMA. So I feel actually for finance, IMA was a very good option. There are a couple of banks who actually used to only go to IIM Bangalore. So Barclays used to go to only IIM Bangalore. But really, I think in terms of, maybe that might be true a few years back. I would say, I think it's a myth, because, early 2000s probably that was a truth. But nowadays, IMA is as good, if not better, for finance folks.
That's a helpful insight.
Yeah, and tell me one thing. So I am Ahmedabad, like there are 400 people now. So can you help us understand, like these 400 people, how many of them would be going to what kind of roles?
Yeah, so it's a mad race for consulting, as soon as you get into campus. So, and it varies year by year. So for example, the year I was there and the following year, MBB is hired in bulk. MBB, like Aman said, McKinsey, BCG,
Yeah,
Bain.
yeah.
And apart from that, you have Carney, LEK, etc., etc. But in my batch, and I think even the batch following, and maybe even the batch after that, each of them, MBB hired about across interns and finals, 20 people, I would say total. So just 60 people just there, right? Plus, a bunch of other firms like Carney, etc. Accenture also hires for their consulting team. So about 100 people, I would say, would go into consulting. Banking is much lesser. Banking, because the numbers are much lesser, so consulting firm one would hire 20, but a bank would hire maybe one or two, right? So banking people would maybe 10-15 people, 3-4 people in sort of investing, like I said. But there's a bunch of product management, so a lot of tech companies come. Sales and marketing, of course, that's the sort of holy grail that HUL or PNG, Mondelez, etc. Right? Those would hire I would say 30-40 people. And then general management, you have TAS, the Tata Administration Services, ABG, all these groups hire for their gen man roles, right? So that's
What is Gen Man exactly?
so so for example, I'll give you an example of TAS, and that's how typically all these roles work. General management. So what they do is they hire you for a program where you have stints across their company. So Tata would place you, let's say, in Trent one day, or Tata Chemicals another day, or Tata Capital another day, but like for 6 months or 12 month stints where you work across, and then over time you choose what you like. So that's a way for them to build their leadership talent as well.
Yeah, I think very similar to like I did Aditya Birla Group
AB,
Finance Leadership
exactly,
Program.
yeah.
So they also had these kind of programs for MBAs.
Yeah.
3 stints for 4 months each, and then you decide which stint you
So
need
ABG
to work
also has this thing off campus, which is not finance but more sort of wider for
Management.
post MBAs as
on.
well.
Right. Yeah,
Like Unilever also.
Correct.
has, yeah.
Unilever also.
Correct,
yeah.
correct. Makes sense. And since all of you are from consulting background, all 3 are from BCG, coincidentally, I didn't know before I called you here. But so is it like consultants are always preferred like to get into private equity? Like, is it like the route to get into private equity? Is it mandatory that, okay, if consulting is there, then the route becomes easier, or like what are your thoughts?
No, I won't say that, but you guys should add as well from your firms how you see it. But at Kedaara, for example, it's been an evolution. I would say like 3-4 years back, it was largely bankers who were coming. Actually, 2000 mid 2010s, right? A lot of bankers were coming in. But I think recently what seen is the quality of talent at consulting firms, and just the sheer number is so high. So for example, when we go out to recruit, let's say pre-MBAs or post-MBAs, we have a wider pool across bankers and consultants, right? And just by the sheer numbers of consultants which are out there, you'll find more people are consultants. But we have former bankers at our firms as well. But I don't know how it's at Blackstone.
No,
or Apax.
I think completely, just adding to his answer, what he's saying is completely right. It's just what we have observed is when we start recruiting for the analyst associate role, generally it's a pre-MBA role. And a lot of the good investment banks hire folks who have already done their MBA in India.
So what do you mean by pre-MBA role exactly?
So it's basically, I think most, at least PE firms in Bombay I've seen is they hire you, they have a wider set of analyst associates that they hire for a 2 to 3 year role, and then basically that's a pyramid, right? They don't need 10 people every layer. So I think then some go for an MBA, some come back, some shift to another fund or another career or something, some go for a startup, or some will go to industries. But basically they cultivate the entrepreneurial spirit, and these 2 years are great to learn everything from finance to running a portfolio, operations, the wider aspect, because all PE shops are small. So while these 10 analyst associates get trained very well, but I think the next step for them organically often ends up being an MBA, and especially when the role was designed like 10-15 years back in India. Things have changed significantly now. But coming back to the point, normally analyst associates in the traditional global PE shops or the domestic PE shops are not post-MBA ones. Vis-a-vis in India, most investment banks hired from the IMABCs of the world. So I think that was the first gap. And consultants started hiring pre-MBA before the investment banks did. So I think just the pool itself became wider. And I think when we look out, I think it's a thing in the where we want diversity, we want a mix of consultants and bankers, but it's just that the pool that we shortlist from, that is more consultant heavy.
Yeah.
Because right out of undergrad, you will see that there are at least out of undergrad, there are not many front-end IB roles in India.
Mm-hmm.
So that also limits the pool of candidates that you can look at. So it's
Right.
just the volume of consultants, it's way more.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you'll know, like banks in India, at least the bulge bracket, most of them don't go campus. They either go post MBA or CAs. I've not seen either IITs or DU etc. People going into JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, those kind of firms. I've not seen anyone.
No front end, like hardly any front end roles at undergrad level.
I think we won't mind hiring from the traditional global services role as well, where you get a mix of more mid-end and then a few months of front-end exposure as well. But we would love to hire from that role as well, because you do learn a lot. I don't think there's a significant difference at least in terms of your learning for your hard skills of corporate finance, financial modeling, all of that. But it's I mean there shouldn't be, is my point of view, there shouldn't be, if someone's working in a Deutsche or JP Morgan in the middle role, supporting a team based out of Europe or Hong Kong, but is doing the same work. And we'd be happy to hire from that set as well, provided they have the education pedigree.
Right. Fair. So both of you have not done your MBA, right? So
No.
Kartikey, you've done from IIM Ahmedabad, and so did you also join this as a pre-MBA role at your funds also?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And can you explain, like, if after 2 years or 3 years, is it mandatory for the person to go for an MBA, or can the person still stay in the fund and do the journey? Because the point here is that after MBA also, after 2 years MBA, like if they want to get into PE ultimately, they're already in a private equity, which is one of the most high paying jobs. So I'm trying to understand what is the use of an MBA now for 2 years if they want to get into PE only ultimately.
I think that's a question I've also been debating.
I think everyone goes through in their life.
Everyone's debating. I think if you look maybe 5-10 years back, it was very different. The setup was very different, where people would prefer global MBAs. But if I look today, it's changing. Like Indian markets are still, say, few years behind US, Europe, where the trends have already changed, where there are a lot of firms offer track roles, because at the end of the day, that experience is also very valuable. So at least in here now things are changing, where some firms are now open to giving track roles without an MBA.
What is the track role?
Track role is basically that you don't, going for an MBA is like you completed, say, your 3 years as associate, then you go for MBA for 2 years. It's not necessary that you have a return offer from your fund, and you can continue in the same fund as VP, and so you might go for an MBA, then you'll have to sit for recruiting again, get a job back. Track role is basically where they say it's okay, you don't have to go for an MBA, you can continue, you can grow into the next layer in the organization, you can become a VP and grow without an MBA. So that's like a track role.
Okay. And this depends, like this is again mutual, like subject to performance of the candidate.
Subject to performance, subject to some firms can have internal restrictions that it's a policy that they want MBA. Some firms are more open to it. So it's very firm dependent, and there's no industry rule of thumb on it.
So, got it.
Yeah, I think over here, what I would add to what you completely agree, that times have changed. Earlier, there was a very big arbitrage in terms of what you could earn in the US versus what you earn in India. So back in early 2000s, at least for every engineer, it made sense to do your engineering, go to America, work in the Amazons and the Googles of the world, and there's a 8 to 10x of salary delta. But I think now in the last 2 decades, lot of good corporate jobs have come. I mean, you see in the mindset in our families also, right? Versus what we had for entrepreneur, everyone was like, job mat karo, apna kaam karo. And that was looked upon because the good jobs are not here. But that changed significantly. All of us have felt that now that stigma of doing a job is not there because the good jobs are here in India. So I think that changes things towards the importance of an MBA. Now, how I would want to decide MBA is what I want out of an MBA. One is if it's a geography change. One is if I want an industry change. 3 is I want to work on my networking and social communication skills. 4 is if I just want to take a break or I don't know what I want to do. 5th is if I just want to have fun, 2 years of vacation and just traveling. Yeah. So I think if you
Kartikey is smiling, we'll talk about that also.
Yeah. So I think you have to decide what you want out of it. Yeah. So I think when I was deciding, I think I didn't want any of these 5 things actually, so it was not even a decision. So I think that's why I took a call that I don't want to, but I think then what if I'm not doing an MBA? So then the other thing is, when it comes to track, is how that option is there to continue is also sometimes many things have to fall into place. One is you have to like where you are, you have to like the firm, you have to like the people you can see, you can have a career over here. Two is they have to like you back.
Yeah.
Three is there can be a match where both of you like each other, but there's no third is there has to be an opening. Firm is looking to add a headcount in that senior role. Sometimes you can be the best associate, people can love you back, but there's just no opening over there. So I think the team is full. So
And
I
the
think
team size are too small
team sizes
also.
are small. These are small shops. So it could be a possibility where you're great, but things so there the luck factor definitely comes in. And so it's multiple factors. There's no straight answer, but you have to think across these various facets. And it could be later that 5, 6 years later, I've decided today to not do an MBA. 6, 7 years later, I want to go for a role, but they might have a requirement of an MBA or might not. So, but the thing is, you can't then go back and regret. Once you've taken a decision, just be with it. Whatever you deserve, you will get. What falls out, just be happy with it and don't question yourself and your decisions that you took in the back. I think you have to have that mindset.
Right.
You should have.
Yeah, no, I think even at Kedaara, you have had various cases, right? People who have gone on their track roles and they're doing very well. People who've gone for their MBAs, gone into another sector. People who've gone for their MBAs and are now coming back to Kedaara. And people have gone for their MBAs and switched to another, sort of role completely, right? So it's completely an individual choice, right? People, for example, a very, very close friend was at Kedaara. He did his MBA from Harvard and is now coming back and joining Kedaara after that. He wanted to try out something else, he wanted to try out public market investing. He did that over his summers. He realized he didn't like it as much and thought he wants to come back to India, and so he's joining Kedaara back. The other thing is, after an MBA, what you'll realize is if you want to do private equity, people who've had undergrads in India and experience in India, they don't really get private equity jobs in the US. That's a big, there's so many people who've gone with their pre-MBAs, and all of them, if they're looking to come back to India, the jobs are not that many, right? So they are also, some of them are also struggling. So and then if you've spent that much amount in a foreign MBA, and if you're struggling, then it does something to your head as well, right? So it's a very conscious choice one should make. I was laughing at what the Divyansh was saying in terms of the fun part, because I've had so many batchmates who've gone for those MBAs, and my Instagram is just full of travel to Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, and the most exotic places.
Yeah, these friends who are not active on Instagram at all, and suddenly they have 5 picture stories a day, and they're gone for their MBA. They want to show everyone I'm living the good life.
Everyone's going to South America, because that's not something that you'll go from India ever, right? And from US, it's direct flights everywhere. So the entire South America is covered by all MBA people who are going.
Right, got it. And for anyone who wants to decide whether to do an MBA or not, so what would you advise? What are some of the factors they should consider before deciding also whether they should go for an MBA or not?
I think Divyansh already listed them down. I think that's that covers it. Really, ultimately, it's about what you are looking for in MBA, and that's what I think the factors you mentioned, I think, really covers it all.
And apart from that, the example you gave of the guy at Kedaara and he came back again. So is it like that after going for a Harvard MBA or let's say an Ivy League MBA, the salary jump would be much higher, and does that happen?
Yeah, so he's just progressing to the next stage at Kedaara. So I won't say the Harvard added to, because those are standard sort of comps where he'll be joining. So if he would have stayed on for a couple of more years, he would have made that switch anyway. So it's not that the Harvard thing made his comp really very different.
Got it.
I think he went there more for the experience of it all. I think
the fact that he's joining back at a senior role itself gives him the higher salary.
But those experiences are also very different, right? For an MBA, they had a course on sports, something related to sports, and Toto Wolff and George Russell come into the class. David Beckham came to a class, right? So those are the kind of experiences you also get. It's not all tangible. Some of these intangibles also you have to realize.
Correct.
Some of these global MBAs, just the networking. So he was telling me that he has a batchmate who is son of some prince of some country in Africa. Those are the kind of alumni that the network that you build, right? That's also something that people value.
So I agree. I think international MBA, a few of my friends, they've also got into Stanford and Wharton, and they were telling me about their experiences. Stanford has this class every week where all the batchmates, they are divided into groups, and every, I think, Wednesday or Thursday, once in a week, they just have to sit with each other and just do nothing. Like they have to sit in a classroom and 8 people are sitting and they're just discussing random things about their life or about some problems and just introspecting and all of that. So that guy was telling me that these classes really helped him to understand what he needs to do with his life ahead. And these kind of classes are something which really, like, again, nothing tangible is there, as you rightly mentioned, but these kind of classes really helped him also to understand about the perspectives that keep happening. So that is about the international MBA. We'll get to the topic again, like, which is the private equity thing here. So let's first break down what exactly is a private equity, and then let's break it down global funds versus domestic funds, and let's talk about your funds as well. People would love to understand what do you guys also do on a regular basis. So Kartikey, if I were to ask you, like, can you break down for a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old kid, like, what exactly is a private equity and what work you guys do?
It's hard for me to break it down for a 13 or a 15-year-old, but I'll try.
Yeah.
It's similar to, what you can think of if someone understands mutual funds. They can, it's a very close analogy to, what private equity means from a structure perspective. So basically you raise money from your investors, which are called, limited partners. And these are not individual limited partners. For example, mutual funds, you and I invest as retail investors, but, these are really institutions, like pension funds or endowment funds or, HNI families, etc. They put in money, it's pooled into a vehicle and you invest in companies which are private, which are not listed. So that's why it's called private equity, because you are taking equity stake in a private company. Typically from a horizon of, anywhere from 5 years to 7 years, typically average, I would say 5 years horizon that you invest in. You, let's say it's a $1 billion fund, you do, let's say 10, 12 investments from that. So it's a very concentrated portfolio, unlike a mutual fund where you'll invest in, 30, 40, 50 stocks. So it's a concentrated bet on companies which are private from a 5 to 7 year horizon. And you invest in companies, you hold them for a period of time. You may put on leverage, you may make management changes, you try to improve the operations of a company, hopefully grow the EBITDA of the company over the period of your horizon, and then you exit that company. You will make a certain return on that, and that money is distributed back to your limited partners. They are the ones who are invested, and you take some share of the profits. That's really how a private equity works. But please guys add if I've missed anything, or it needs to be really more number.
No, I think I think you correctly broke it up. While one part is obviously raising funds, and so basically there are two sources of revenue for any private equity firm. One is the fixed fee that you get out of raising fund, that is one revenue stream, and then the other is the carry portion once the investments that you've done. Once you do the value added part of it, the value creation part of it, that's the thesis with which you invested companies. They make the investments make profit, and you get a share of profit, which is called the carry, which the firm makes. And so that's it. And the third important part is obviously the exiting the companies you've invested, exiting them. So I think most of it, that I think one part I'll just add is, when we say we change the management, we don't change, we strengthen the management. Sometimes we just continue with the management that is there. If there are roles, if we have growth plans or there are roles to fill, you can strengthen them. You add to, let's say the companies have their board of directors, so you make sure that the company, if it has good corporate governance, we're happy with it, continue. If there are some roles that processes that need to add it, some information system that needs to be in place, some IT transformation that needs to happen, some geography or product segment you have not entered, then I mean that's the strategic calls that we get the best advisors to come help with. And I think all our firms have those institutional setups to make sure that the value creation pieces fall together, and then you exit at the right time. So that's basically it.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, just one thing here. So when you say that there's a management fee and then there's a carry also, like, is it similar to the 220 model, like, which is the 2% management fee, 20% carry, or like it depends from fund to fund?
The numbers vary, but the model is that. Yeah.
Got it. So 2% of the capital raised would be the management fee, which the fund would get, and this would be distributed amongst all the people who are working in that fund.
Yeah.
Basically, that's your salaries
And
running
other
the firm on a
expenses.
day-to-day basis,
Right.
firm expenses.
And the carry would be what, that'll come after 5-6 years maybe, like when the exit would happen, right?
Yeah, so it varies, and you can get really technical in this. There's a European waterfall, there's an American waterfall, and
What is that?
So in I think
Yeah.
I'm also not 100% clear, but in one of them, the carry comes deal by deal. So let's say from a fund you invest in multiple deals, each deal you exit, you can distribute carry. In the European one, you have to exit completely, and then the carry gets distributed.
Exit completely, as in like.
So let's say you've raised 1 billion, you've invested that billion across 10 companies, right?
Okay.
So you have to return back at least $1 billion or plus a hurdle, which is let's say 8% dollars. So you have to return, let's
So
say
what is
1.5.
hurdle?
So hurdle is the minimum rate of return that you sort of not guarantee, but minimum rate of return that you have to give to your investors. So once you've returned the base plus the hurdle, that's when you can start taking carry. Versus in the American one, each deal, let's say you've made a 25% IRR, hurdle is only 8%. So above that, you can get carry for that deal itself. Versus in the European one, you have to. So to your question, in one model you can start earning carry after 5 years. The other one, it can take 6, 7, 8, 10 years, depending on when the entire fund is returned.
And what if like the hurdle, like if the hurdle rate is not met, then like how does that happen then?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a case like that, so I don't know what would happen in that case. I would have to ask someone.
No, in theory, you basically don't get the carry income.
Yeah.
The fund does not get the carry income.
No, but
That for sure.
because for
Basically,
example,
it's
if 8% is the hurdle rate, and
Yeah.
let's say you guys give 5% return, so
Yeah.
3% का जो gap है,
You don't have to.
You don't have to. It's
Achha.
not a debt, right? It's equity at the end of the day. You will not be able to raise your next fund.
That's impact. So it's definitely there's a cost to it, but it's
Yeah.
not direct.
Right. Can you also differentiate between the global funds versus the domestic funds? How many of them would be there in India? How many of them would be hiring? So, can you differentiate between them?
I think global funds, these guys can explain it better because
Yeah.
they're already there. But you have both in the market. Global funds are typically larger ones and they do larger ticket sizes. Domestic funds are typically smaller, but that's also slightly changing over a period of time. Among the global ones, and there also, there's a bunch of variety. Let's private equity, real estate, infra, etc. But if I just stick to private equity, global funds, there will be 10, 15
Yeah.
global
That
funds out
sounds
there.
right.
Domestic side again, there's a bunch of them, and there's a higher mortality rate there because funds open, they're not able to raise their next fund, so some of them die. But in terms of active in the market in private equity, mid market and above, there'll be call it 10 funds, which are active. There may be bunch more which have raised money in the past, invested, but were not able to raise the next one. But about 10 would be, active.
Got it.
in the market.
And domestic versus global. So, what is the exact difference? So these domestic funds are
Local.
domiciled in
Yeah.
India, like they're
Yeah.
incorporated in India.
Yeah.
And the global funds, their incorporation is outside India, and they have like an India vertical. Is that
I think
the
how
case?
to think of it is like the GPs are.
What are GPs?
So like general partners are basically the entity. Like every firm that we work with, we are the general partners. The firms are the general partners, and they raise funds like Kartikey explained from the LPs, the limited partners. So let's say the fund I work with, the GP is started. It started in America, and then obviously there are different things where you set up the vehicle, where the funds are coming from, and all of that. But it's basically it's global in presence, and I think the GP is they're Indians, the
Yeah.
ones who started, the promoters of the firm.
Yeah.
I think that's the easiest way to say whether it's
Yeah.
a domestic Indian firm or a global firm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
But I think for most global funds who invest in India, their funds are now pan-Asian funds. I think
Correct.
Blackstone also invested out of an Asia fund.
That's why I would not say American and it'd
Yeah.
be a global.
Yeah.
So some funds have like global pool of funds. So you raise one global fund and you invest out of that fund across geographies. But some funds have dedicated pools of capital for say Asia.
Got it.
Yeah, there are a couple of global funds which actually raised money just for India. So Sequoia, before they split, when it was still Sequoia, they raised an India-only fund.
Okay.
Which, even though it was global. So some, when GPs become very, very large in a particular geography, they may raise money for that particular geography itself. But, the ICs or the investment committees where the decision making is done, that's still, sitting outside of India. Whereas for domestic funds like ours, my ICs, my founders, I meet them every week. So the decision making is local. Versus, in a global fund, the decision making is, more global.
Got it. And what are the structure of these funds? Like, what is the entity? Is it is it an LLP or a private?
Yeah,
limited?
I think for us it'll be different versus
It'll be
yours.
very different, and
Yeah.
with every fund also it'll be very different. It's not-
But it's not a company, right? I mean,
No,
it's
it
not
can.
a-
So, for example,
is
for
it a private limited?
can be a company.
can be. So
Okay.
for us, it's an AIF.
Okay. What is that?
So alternative investment fund. I
Hmm.
think that's a full
Yeah.
form. But typically all your PMSs, etc., they're
Hmm.
all structured as an AIF.
Okay.
So at least for global Indian funds, most of the domestic funds are structured as AIF, and plus now with Gift City, some funds are based out of Gift City as well, and there's AIF. So it can get very complicated. But for example, Fund One, that time AIFs did not exist. That was a private limited company. So, but
Okay.
I don't know how it's for.
Given it's not Indian companies investing, the structures are very different.
Hmm.
I think for also it'd be very similar. The LLP is very limited to. Yeah, I
So
think
is it LLP?
It's not. It won't be an
limited
LLP.
liability
Yeah.
partnership.
It won't be an LLP.
Yeah, I think
Got
our GP entity is an LLP, but
Okay.
which is where our, for example, my salary comes from an LLP, but that's the entity which is charging the management fee. The fund is separate. There's another entity which is charging the management fee,
Hmm.
which can be an LLP, but the fund itself, which is
Hmm.
investing, is an AIF.
Got it. Fair. So we have one. So yours is a domestic fund, and both of yours are global funds. So Apax and Blackstone. Can you talk a bit more about your funds as well? Like, what is like the fund size and investments that maybe notable investments you guys have done?
So Apax is one of the global funds. They have 7 offices worldwide. They have till date raised like $65 billion of capital, and
$65 billion.
Yeah.
Wow.
And currently,
How much would that be in rupees? 65 into no,
About 500
So it'll be 5 lakh crores.
5 lakh crores.
5 lakh crores rupees. Okay. My God. Okay.
So currently we're investing out of our 11th fund, which is a $10 million plus fund. So basically, like how these funds work is every 3 to 4 years you raise another your flagship fund, which is like your largest buyout fund. It could be different for different funds.
What
but
is
for
a buyout
Apax, it's
fund?
So buyout fund is basically, so private equity is typically buyout fund. What buyout means is that you are taking large stakes in private companies
okay.
versus, so like the fund can have different strategies. For example, Apax also has different strategies. We have a digital fund which invests smaller check sizes. We have a credit fund, but buyout is the bread and butter, I would say, is the core fund. And so globally, so Apax is structured differently. Like we work as global teams, so we invest across four sectors. And in India, I would say some of the notable investments would be so I have personally worked a lot on tech services, so I would say if people follow data analytics, and Fractal is
Right.
one of the notable investments.
Yeah.
Then
Shrikant is a founder, right? Shrikant.
yeah, I think you've
Yeah.
met him. So that's
I
why.
really like their model. I've been to their office actually. So like their entire business model and the way they have grown in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and
Like
Apex
that.
has made a killing on that deal. So
Oh, is it? Acha, I didn't know this. Oh, yeah.
I think Muthoot was a
No. So in India, it was in finance. We had done Cholamandalam.
Chola, yeah.
Then
okay.
we had done Apollo Hospitals. Then we have done a lot of tech services investments, which people might not.
So Cholamandalam is a listed entity now, right?
right.
So like you guys also invest in listed companies or?
So if I have to look at it, then people do invest in listed stakes. But I would say in India, private equity as an industry has evolved. So if you look at say 10 years back, people started with doing taking smaller stakes.
Yeah.
Market was not really a buyout market, like where people were selling larger stakes, or there were not as many mature private companies. So back in the day, if I take a 10-year, like what happened 10 years ago, people were taking like smaller stakes in public companies as well. Now it's changing. You still
Got it.
invest in public companies. Maybe you take larger stakes, or you take private is also an option. So that also happens, but you do invest in, or even like if you are exiting a company and you IPO the company, you end up holding a stake in listed company. So it's not like you
Yeah.
don't have exposure to public markets. You end up having exposure to public markets.
Makes sense. Cool. Divyansh.
So I work with Blackstone, so basically one of the largest alternate investment space, and we have an global AUM of over $1 trillion.
It crossed $1 trillion.
It crossed $1 trillion,
Wow. I
yeah.
think it was last time we spoke 600, 700. No?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah,
no,
but
it's been trillion.
It's
for
been
a-
trillion.
$1 trillion for over
Yeah,
6
yeah,
months.
yeah.
6 months, no?
Last year it became $1 trillion. Crossed $1 trillion.
Wow.
Yeah, around maybe July, August. Yeah.
Right. So is it the largest now?
It was the largest by then.
Okay,
Yeah. And I work in the India office, and some of the notable investments that we have done I worked with Aadhar Housing Finance. It's an affordable housing finance company, and then ASK Investment Management. Then Simply Learn, Emphasis, which is an IT company. We were invested in Sona Comstar. So many
Got it.
companies.
Got
across.
it.
Globally, I think one company people would know, you would know well, would be Bumble.
From where did I come into picture?
Yeah, but Hilton was one of the largest
Yeah.
buyouts like Blackstone did.
Oh, is
at
it?
that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hilton
So
was-
like, so Hilton, as in like you bought the entire like you bought the majority stake of that company, or like how did
I mean,
that happen?
this deal happened very early 2000s, and they did buy the controlling stake in Hilton.
Okay, got it. So like what happens exactly when you buy, let's say, around 60% stake or
Yeah.
70%? So you guys are like the majority owners
Correct.
now.
Yeah.
So you have to operate the company, run the company also, or how does
no,
it
I
happen?
think we don't have to operate and run the company. There is management for that, and that is completely.
But
the
you have to
management
hire
role.
that management.
No, I mean most of the times we buy companies where the management is already in place.
Okay.
We may, let's say, there are places, but because the organization was not scaled back then, let's say there was not a very strong HR function. So now the plans are to scale the organization further. So we might help them hire a CHRO, but it's also the fact that let's say the CXOs will interview the HR guy, and we will also interview. So it has
Got
to
it.
be, everyone has to be in sync on the same page. So like I said earlier, some time back, that we strengthen the management if required,
Got
but there is no change or anything.
Makes sense. You said AUM of $1 trillion. What exactly is AUM?
AUM is basically the total assets under management, that basically the funds that you've raised that you have to manage, invest, and give a return over.
Got it. Kartikey?
Yeah, no, so Kedaara is a homegrown private equity fund. So started in 2012. That's when we raised our first fund. Currently in our third, so towards the end of our third fund, we'll raise our fourth fund soon. So current AUM is about $4 billion. With the fourth fund, it'll add to that as well. And some of the notable investments that we have made, I'll talk more on the consumer side because that's what people will relate to. So Maneva, we were the only investors in that. Lenskart, that's a big investment for us. Vishal Mega Mart, which is a sort of value fashion retailer, that's another investment. And a bunch of others on financial services, healthcare, tech services. Yeah.
Right. So when you guys work on these investments, so how is the entire process? Can you walk me through like the entire process? How long does it take for one deal to finish, and how is that entire process from start to end?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll start. So I think I'll talk about the evaluation process, but end to end it can take much longer because you meet a company first, and they don't want to do a deal at that point of time. So you keep meeting. For example, we were recently discussing a company that we recently invested in. We first met them 10 years back. Right? And we've been meeting them since then, and eventually it happened. But the actual sort of deal evaluation process, I would say from the day that you start looking at it in detail to the day that you, let's say, close the deal, the shortest time frame could be, call it 4 months, but it could go on for 6, 8, 9, 10 months also, depending on how the process goes. So you'll first get some company material, you look at that material, you interact with the management, do a few of the initial work, maybe do a few expert calls, speak to different people in the market. And then what you do is you put in what's called a non-binding bid. Right, where you say this is the valuation that I'm okay with prima facie, but I would need to do more detailed work for it to be a binding bid, right? Based on that, the bankers, if it's a banker-run process, they would shortlist 2 to 3 investors or maybe 4 investors to go into more detailed diligence. And when you go to that, you do more detailed work, something called financial due diligence, which is basically going through the numbers of the company threadbare, legal diligence, commercial diligence, do more detailed work. And it'll depend on sector by sector. Let's say tech services, you'll try to speak to all their clients, form a view on how fast the company can grow, do more management meetings, and really form a point of view on the management. And then what you do is put in what's called a binding bid. And based on that, the sellers or the founders or the management would select, which fund they would want to partner with. And sometimes that's purely based on valuation, but sometimes that's a lot of other things also, get added to it. You have personal rapport with someone you want to work with. You feel someone can add more value, so you would want to work with them. So eventually they make a decision that this is the fund or these are the people I want to partner with. and then what you do is get into more detailed sort of document negotiation, where you'll agree on what would be the rules of engagement going forward. How would you partner, because there may be multiple shareholders in the fund, in the company, so how would you partner? So you do that sort of negotiation and you come to a signing where you sign definitive documents, and post that, it's basically closing, where a fund would call capital, we would put in the money in the company. If there's some regulatory approvals that are required, to take that, and then you basically close. So end to end, this process can take as little as 4 months, or as long as 8, 9, 10. Fund
that long?
companies have taken longer.
Yeah,
Oh my god. So in 1 year, is it fair to assume that 2 deals would happen with a PE fund?
It's every year is different.
Yeah.
Every year is different. Every fund is different. Vintage is different. So completely depends.
Got it.
And depends on bandwidth also, right? For example, last year we did 4 deals, but initially we used to do 2 to 3 deals.
Okay.
But the team size is expanded, so you can do more deals.
Yeah.
Also.
Got it. And what are the average ticket sizes these private equity funds would invest in these companies?
Again, I think every fund has a very different mandate. One is the first split is obviously the size of the fund, and accordingly you decide how much per deal exposure you want to take. And second is whether you're taking, what's the strategy, whether you take minority stake or a controlling stake. So I think if you are taking a minority stake, investments could range anything between, let's say, $50 million to $300 million. I think that's about it. And if you are taking controlling stakes, normally what we've seen is it ranges anything between $100 million to close to $1 billion.
Got it. So
Yeah.
putting in $1 billion also, like in
It can
some
be more.
companies.
Yeah.
It can be more.
Got it. But this would be for global funds, I assume,
For
right?
global.
What
Sometimes there's a consortium as well where multiple funds get together and can reach $1 billion. But over $1 billion, I think will be mostly global funds.
Got it. What would be the average ticket size for you?
So it's changes with the size of the fund also.
Yeah.
So our fund has evolved in sizes. So first fund was 600 million, second was 800, third was 1.1. So average check size from our third fund was, call it 150. 100 million dollars to 150 million dollars, but as low as, call it 50, 60, as high as 200 from the fund. But we have LPs as well, so we partner with them and have done check sizes as high as $500 million. And so we have limited partners, like we explained before, and some of them co-invest with us. So we put in some money and they sort of also put in money. We'll be the ones managing the sort of investment, but they also add on to the money, so we can invest much higher as well.
Who are like these limited partners usually? Like, what's their profile? Are these like some institutions, or are these some sovereign funds, or like?
So
what
can be
is
any,
it?
and there are many. So for example, there's pension funds.
Okay.
Let's say a pension fund based out of US or Canada. They have large pools of money and they want to deploy it in India, let's say. So or in US as well. So they would partner with some private equity funds. There's sovereign wealth funds. All your likes. I don't want to give names, but sovereign wealth funds. Then you have endowments, university endowments. All your Harvard, Stanfords and all have large endowment funds, and they need to invest money. So that's another pool of capital. Then you have large family offices. They have large sums of money and they also need to invest. These are the ones I would say, and sometimes insurance companies also they have big corpus of money that they need to invest. So these are typically the largest. But I don't know, in global funds, is there any other pool of capital that's also?
I think it's similar. It's very similar.
Yeah.
I think now people are moving towards looking towards a model where they can structure retail investor monies into alternate investments as well. And something people are working toward, let's say in India also, there are enough domestic funds that raise money from individual HNIs, where you can also, let's say, become an LP in a fund. So I think global funds are also working to a model where they can create a product for HNI retail investors as well. But that's, I think with time things will change.
Plus there's minimum check sizes there, so that
so it's not for everyone, but like a mutual fund for really HNIs.
Wealthy investors.
And with your work profiles, are you also involved with like raising capital also? It's like portfolio, or just investing, scouting companies and due diligence and all of that? How is that divided?
Most firms that fundraise, at least in global firms, the fundraising is done by the investor relations team, which is a separate team which just looks into fundraising. And the role of an associate or analyst who will join at our level will mostly be limited to portfolio and your scouting new deals.
Got it.
But you also, at the same time, you do give your you at the same time you do give inputs to IR whenever they require anything from you, but it's not your primary job.
Got it. Fair.
It's slightly different for us because, when our LPs do diligence on us, they also sort of meet us, so we also interact. Like we had an AGM last week and all of our LPs were there and we were also sort of interacting with all of them. They would ask us questions. So all these LPs, when they invest in a fund, they would do diligence, and mostly I would say 80-90% of that is limited to, let's say, the partners and the MDs and the directors, but they do also want to interact with the wider team. So sometimes, you'll go for a dinner, you'll call everyone and sort of you would interact with them. In AGMs they would interact with us, but like she said, it's largely limited to the IR team and the sort of senior man.
Got it. And how big are teams at your funds? Like how many people are there?
I think be, let's say 10 analyst associates and then 15 people additionally, so around 25 people on the P side. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the support functions. So a wider team for that as well.
Got it.
But this keeps changing, evolving. Every fund is increasing. We were 15 people, let's say a few years back, then became 20, then became 25. So I think every fund has its own
Got it.
cycle. Yeah.
How many for the two?
So for Apax, it's been around 10 investment professionals
Got it.
in India.
Got it. And so these 10 people are basically involved in portfolio and investment, like investing.
Yeah. And globally, we are 400 people.
Got
In
it.
India, it's a 10-member team.
Okay. And
Yeah. For us, similar to what Divyansh said, so on the investment side, we have about 20 to 25 people, which are sort of pure investment team members. But then we have a few operating folks, some of them whom are part-time. So those are operating advisors or operating partners, which are much more senior, former CEOs of companies, etc., who are more for guidance. But we have some sort of, functional experts on the operating side. Let's say someone, expert at finance, someone who's expert at technology. So those are more full-time. So call it about 5 people there. And then, a bunch of support staff, our
Got it.
assistants, finance team, legal team, etc.
so, I mean, is it like fair to assume that like the entire P industry in India, including global funds and domestic funds, the total number of people in the investing, like including all of them, would be what, like just a rough guesstimate? So if 15 global funds on the higher end and if 15 domestic funds are then 30 multiplied by 20, is it like 500 odd people in
Lesser.
India? Lesser than that.
Average won't be 20.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so lesser than that.
Average would be like less than 10.
Okay.
10, I would say.
10, yeah.
So there were 250, 300 people only in
300
India?
should be.
Yeah. But you have VCs also. So if you're talking
Yeah.
only
No, I'm talking about only P, private
Yeah.
equity.
Yeah.
So assuming like 250, 300 people if we assume, and what would be the attrition rate in the industry? I'm trying to calculate the number of hirings every year in private equity. So kitna hoga? Like,
I think the way to look at it would be, so analyst associate, like pre-MBA roles, and then in senior positions. If you
so
look
let's talk about the pre-MBA, the junior ones like analyst associates.
I think typically in every fund, based on the associate pool size, people do end up going for MBA. So I think almost every year we have seen annually each fund hires like 1 to 2 or 1 to
Okay.
3 people depending upon the size.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is fairly standard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you can, the other way you can think about it is, let's say, it's a 2 to 3 year program. So every year, 30 to 50% of the people will go for their MBAs. Right? That's another way you can think about
Right.
the pre-MBA. But like you said, 2 to 3 people, a fund would
So
hire.
2 to 3 people and 15 मान के चलते हैं. So 13 to 2, 60, 65 people every year.
No,
But
no,
वो
I
भी
think
ज़्यादा है.
40 to 50.
Yeah.
अच्छा, 40
Yeah.
to 50.
On the
Yeah.
lower end, because 3 is on the higher side.
Higher
Every
side,
year
okay.
you are. So on an average, let's say 2.5 people per fund, and we did a math of 20 funds. So I think 40 to 50 is the right.
Got it.
Some funds don't have a pre-MBA program.
Yeah.
Some fund may only hire one. Some
Correct.
funds may hire once in 2 years also. So
So
it's
there
not
are
very
funds that
structured.
hired an analyst, only 1 or 2 analysts together, and then for 3 years it's just them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. So I mean, every year is just 40-50 people getting into P
40,
private
Yeah.
lesser
equity.
than 30 to 40 actually.
My
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
such a small industry.
It will grow, but I do think it will grow over a period of time because I think for every industry, let's say you were talking about consulting in 2000 and you would think the same way, but what you should see is in US private equity funds, right? There are 100-member teams, right? They would hire 10-20 people every year. So I think growth
fund.
over a period of time. It's not there today, but I believe if the industry has to grow, this number has to grow, right? right, over a period of time. But it won't happen in next 5 years. It won't happen in the next 10 years. But 20, 30
So
years.
why is there such a huge gap? Like, what do you think are the reasons? Like, US private equity funds hire so
sizes
many.
of GDP only are.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is basically, let's say there were no infra funds 2 decades back, then the infra funds coming.
Yeah.
US has many, and then I think India is also picking up on infra funds. Then there can be, let's say, tech funds. There was a wind of their tech funds. So if you basically different strategies and different styles of investing, real estate funds, infra, tech, traditional buyout, growth. So I think if you just more, I think if the industry grows and every fund tries to have these different sets of
Strategies.
teams and strategies, I think then itself every team has the potential to just double up.
Right.
And plus, I think the other way you can think is, let's say, India private equity is only Bombay, right?
Yeah.
And only Mumbai. US, while there's New York, there are large teams in San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, etc. Their mid-market funds are based in Austin, Minneapolis, small, each of these small towns also has like $1 billion fund. So the depth of the market is so much there, right? There's so many people. India is, you're just at the tip, like you're just starting in this industry.
Fair. Yeah, I agree. I think I think Mumbai being the financial capital of India, like Mumbai is the place. For VCs, it's Bangalore.
Bangalore,
as of now.
Gurgaon.
Likely,
Yeah.
Right. Fair. So, since only 30 to 40 people are being hired every year in PE, so I'm sure, since it's such a niche industry, the pay packages would be very high. So, Divyansh, you must be minting a lot of money, then?
Nothing like that, man.
Nothing, yeah?
Nothing. They're taxes.
Oh, yeah. Taxes is something,
Yeah, he fits in the highest bracket.
I wish.
How much surcharge do you pay, Divyansh? Okay, so let's talk about the salary ranges, which is the question I wanted to ask. So general salary ranges which one can expect. Maybe let's break it down again into domestic versus global funds. For an analyst or an associate who's just about to enter, how much one can expect?
I think again, it varies a lot. Domestic funds, it's all over the place. Honestly, I can talk about my fund. And again, I don't know if I should give these numbers out, in a public forum, but
It's marketing.
it would be for a pre-MBA, call it about 30-40 lakhs fixed, but our bonus ranges are wider, so anywhere from 100 to 200% bonuses.
200%? What are you saying?
Yeah.
My
So that's the range. So depending on your performance.
So the variable can go more than the fixed also?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Depends on the year and
Yeah.
how many deals
Yeah.
have happened.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the number for global?
But I should say most domestic funds would be lower than that and much lower than that, honestly.
What would be the top 5 or top 4, 4-6 domestic funds in India?
So Chris is of course there along with Kedaara, but Chris doesn't have a pre-MBA program, so they don't hire pre-MBAs. But other than that, you have multiples, True North, Courageous has come up, recently.
I think
You
Samara
have
is there,
Everstone, Samara, CX. Those are some of the top domestic funds.
Got it. Fair. And global funds, what would be the top 5-6 funds?
I think Blackstone, Apax, EQT, Bearing, Carlyle, KKR,
Advent,
TPG,
Baincap, TPG, TA.
TA,
Yeah,
GA.
10, 11 तो इधर ही हो गए.
Yeah. 10 global funds are very active in India.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. And how much one can expect at a fresher level at global funds?
At a fresher level, I think anything between for fixed anything between 40 to 60, 70,
Okay.
Yeah.
and again
Bonus
bonus
would
would range anything between 50% to 200%.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Very interesting. So let's talk about the interview experiences of the three of you. This would be a little detailed segment, and a lot of my audience also are people who want to, let's say, get into these fields and understand the interview experiences. Divyansh and Kartikey, both of you also hire at your firm, like you also take interviews. So it'll be good to understand from your perspective also, how do you conduct interviews? But before that, I would love to understand what kind of interview questions you were asked, how did you prepare for them, what resources you used when you gave the interviews, and all of that. So maybe one by one we can go.
Start?
Yeah, I think all of us can probably add on our interview experiences. While I think for me, I think two things. One, I had corporate finance experience from Deutsche, so plus with a CA CFA background, I think that helped with the core financial concepts. And second thing is, the BCG recruitment experience when you practice for a month for your case interviews. I think that also gave me an advantage. I think similar for that'll be the case for all three of us.
Yeah.
So I think my prep essentially was just to go, at least for when I was interviewing for private equity roles, I think it was just to go back and revise what I did earlier, what I was doing right, what I was not doing wrong, and just fix those. So I think for anyone, I think the advice that I would give for anyone, what to take from it is basically have the basics, the three statement financials, having an understanding of that. If there's one thing that's changing on one statement, what is the contra effect on the other? Just having that very clear. Uh, Understanding just the basic sense of what you're applying for. So it's an investing role. So just understanding cash flows, DCF, all of that could be important. While these are not make or break, it always gives you an edge if you have an understanding, and if you're not from a commerce background. If you're a CA, CFA, definitely understand concepts to the T. But if you're coming from an engineering background, understanding the basics is important. I think beyond that, there are enough resources available online on Corporate Finance Institute. Just Google definitions of basic terms you are coming across and getting a grip over it. Now, that's the easier thing to do. The tougher thing to do is practicing your case interviews. And why case interviews are important is basically they convey to the interviewer how you think. And structured thinking is very important in the kind of roles that we are all in. And that's where case interviews help. Basically, any problem statement that you are given, you need to take a step back and break it into 2 or 3 problems, and then come to a solution for those 2 or 3 problems. For each of those problems, you need to think of the universe of factors and summarize into 2 or 3 factors that you'd want to discuss in the interview. So let's say there's a problem statement of, let's say, basic profits are down. So then profits are down, then you'll have to go up to what is profit made of. I'm doing a very basic thing. This is not, it won't be as simple, but it's like the profits are made of revenue.
I became happy. इतना simple है तो मैं भी apply कर लेता हूँ.
Yeah, it like profits are made of revenues and costs. Then you discuss both. Different businesses have different streams of revenue. What are the different streams of revenue? You ask the right questions to get to the right answers. I think that's very important to, again, step back, structurally think, then ask the right questions, and then navigate to the right answer. And then every interview adds a flavor, whether they want to test more on the qualitative aspect or the quantitative aspect, the technical aspect, and then some would want to see if you can get creative around it. Some may just want to say, even if you're giving the right answer, they might just want to tell you that you're giving the wrong answer, just to see whether you can manage stress. They also, while in a technical interview also, they can test you on your HR, on your communication skills, whether you would be, I think the other important point that I would like to highlight is these are very small shops. So being a nice person and a likable person is actually very important. Some may think that we are not coders, we're not into coders or algo or quant, where if I'm just 10 on 10 on IQ, I'll get hired. It's not that, because it's a very local business in a small shop, and relationships matter a lot, because you'll be interacting with your management, with your multiple advisors, bankers. I think with board directors, I think it's very important that you have your EQs up there, where you can be trusted with sensitive information and relationships. So it's very important to be a team player, because it's never a one-man show over here in these shops. So I think that's also one thing that these people test you on. I think you guys should definitely.
How many rounds of interview had you given at Blackstone?
I had given 9 interviews.
9 rounds of interviews, and
I
30
think
minutes.
the idea is to basically meet, because we are small shops, and it's at least to meet the entire senior team, so that everyone likes and everyone says that yeah, we'd be happy to work with her or him. Yeah.
And what, like 30 minutes per interview, I assume?
45 minutes to 1 hour.
Per interview. My God, weren't you grilled, or 9 hours of interview?
I mean, grilling is not the right word. It does get exhausting. Like I'll be very honest. I was popping a croissant after. It depends. That happened in BCG as well, because we had like 5 interviews in a day.
Yeah.
And these are, you have to give your best, right? You have to be consistent. That's the secret. That every interview you have to be very consistently at your best. One bad interview and it's like Hunger Games.
Yeah.
So I think it does get stressful, and the multiple coffees and
So all these 9 what happened over how many days?
3 days, 3 or 4 days.
Oh, 3 days, 9 interviews.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And all of this were in
So I think
person?
the funny thing is that you are applying for, I think all of us are applying for multiple PE firms at the same time in the same 2-week window.
Okay.
So per day can go up to 8-9 interviews as well
My
with different
God.
funds. Yeah.
Got it. And was this online for you or
So I was recruiting around right at the advent of COVID. This was May 2020. So yeah, this is all virtual for me, but I think it's a mix of virtual and in person these days for all of us. If you're in Bombay, we might just call you over. If you're traveling, we might just do it all virtually. We might just say, at least for the final interview, just come over. So it's a mix for all of us.
Which was the most difficult round out of all these 9?
I mean, there's no one. It's completely dependent on how comfortable you're with the case. So it's not the person; it's the case topic.
Every round is not a case interview.
I think every round has some case element or at least some technical element. Yeah.
So, like, is it like a guesstimate which you are asked, like estimate the number of Uber rides in a day?
I think that happens more in consulting. Yeah, but not in investing.
So, what kind of case? So, like, I'm trying to understand. So, these cases, when you mean, so are these you have to prepare models, you have to present the deck, or what kind of cases?
I think some funds do have a modeling round, but not us. I think, like I said, it's more of a mix of financial and qualitative aspect of it's finance and strategy is how I would like to say. It's basically, so a business has a problem and you have to fix the problem.
Got it. Fair.
So that is, if a business has to take a decision, there's, let's say, simple fixed cost modeling or variable cost modeling, or like what to opt for, capital budgeting decisions, whether you buy or rent a house, what's the best way. Then they'll throw you some numbers at you, and then they see how you will decide whether to buy or rent.
Yeah.
So
Got it.
that's the kind of
Cool.
yeah.
I think similar to his experience, like I also had 9 interviews and I had a financial modeling round as well, so we can speak about that. But when it comes to interviews, at least the way he segmented, every interview has 2 parts, financial and strategy/commercial. So when it comes to your prep or what interviews look for, say if you are coming from a finance background, then as an interviewer expect you to be very good at finance part. Maybe commercial, I'll think, okay, you can learn on commercial, but finance has to be strong. Similarly, if you're coming from a consulting background, then commercial you have to be very strong. Maybe financial, I'll take a view that you can learn.
What exactly is commercial?
So commercial is more about what he talked about, strategy and case perspective, but how commercial would be around how do you think of investment thesis? Is this an is this an attractive opportunity? So it will come to that D level evaluation. But how, just talking about commercial a little bit, for you as in when you are preparing for interviews, I think what matters there is, A, they will test you on what you have written in your resume, and second is out of the box creative, something you have no idea about, and push you, give you an industry example where you have no idea about. But in the initial round of interviews, usually they try to stick to your resume to understand what you have written. Is it true? The lens that you have to apply, and I'm talking about my personal example which I applied, was that when you are, say I've worked on a case in, say, vehicle finance industry, right? Then when you're preparing for a private equity interview, you have to take a lens, okay, it's now you need to know about the industry. If I'm asked, would I invest in this industry, then you need to think, these are the reasons I would invest, these are the reasons I would not invest. If within this industry, if this is the industry I worked on, which are the key players that I know of in the industry, and why do I think one is better versus the other? So this is another lens you have to apply when you're preparing for a PE interview, because at the end of the day you have to make investment decisions. So that thinking is very important. So what I would say is, when you are writing that resume, each line or case that you have written or everything, or even if you're in finance job, whatever industries you have worked on, it's important to have point of view perspectives on those. Like, why are they growing? Why are they interesting? What's the moat? What could be risk to these industries? And within those, what are the companies or players you would pick and you feel comfortable talking about? Because that would form a large part of your interview, and it will just help you build that muscle. So if you have developed that muscle, even in cases where I give you a company or a sector which you have no idea about in an interview, you will still have that thought process of how do you talk about it, how you talk about the market opportunity, how do you talk about companies positioning, what are their strengths and what are the risks. So at least it helps you with that, building that muscle. And I think preparation for that is, if you're from consulting, okay, the case studies help a lot. At least it helps you give some perspective there. And even if you're finance background, you can refer to like CIC, Case Interviews Cracked, all those books, and you can get build that muscle there. And what additionally helps is like reading news, reading ET business, more about like just being updated so that you know what's happening in the industry. I think that really plays a big part on your commercial side. And on the finance side of things, I think what basic hygiene is definitely what Divyansh mentioned, that how do three statements link to each other, how do numbers talk. That is like the basic hygiene which you'll have to develop if you want to work in this industry.
Can you also talk more about your financial modeling round and what exactly was asked? What did you prepare?
Yeah, so in financial modeling round, basically you are given, they choose any public company.
Yeah.
You are given the annual statements, their investment presentations, and some equity research reports. And say it's a and you're given like 3 to 4 hours. Within those 4 hours, at the end of those 4 hours, the output that is expected is twofold. One is the financial model, and financial model is basically you'll have historical financials. So you project like how the revenue will grow, how the EBITDA or profits will grow of the company. And it's not just a revenue projection simple. You actually have to think through what are the elements that go into building this revenue. So revenue build up, how do you think of cost build up, and eventually some other aspects like, okay, your what will happen to cash, what will happen to balance sheet items, what will happen to cash, what will happen in your, how much cash you will generate, all of that. But basically large part of it would be how do you think of revenue build up, how do you think of that EBITDA growth, and what are the factors that go behind it. And then based on that, you'll also have to calculate returns as in the financial model round. It's just not just projecting, but like what is the end output that you're getting to, which is your financial return. Say you invest say you buy X% stake at this valuation, what are the some exit assumptions you take that you exit after 5 years at this valuation. So how much return you are making, 2x, 3x, or some IRR percentage. So that is something you have to calculate. So that's one part of it. And the other part of it is then the commercial aspects I mentioned, that what is your investment thesis, what could go wrong, and within the investment thesis, why this company, and all of whatever and I think what people miss out on is whatever you're talking about your investment thesis, it has to talk to your financial model, because you have taken certain assumptions in how it is growing. So those two are not independent pieces but very closely related. So it's basically the output is expected, that financial model, those 3 statements, and the returns bridge. And the second thing is that you have to make a 4-5 page PPT where you have to lay out why is this an interesting opportunity, why this company, and lay out what could be the potential value creation levers. Value creation levers, as I think he talked a lot about it, like how do you grow, maybe you enter different markets, what are your value creation levers. And the last is, if you were to diligence this asset, what are the key pieces of information or key pieces that you would want to diligence on. So you have to present all of that in say half an hour, and then there's Q&A on that.
Got it. Any specific resources you guys can recommend for people who are preparing for their interviews? What should they watch or what should they use?
I think, so again, breaking it down in 2 parts, I think for commercial, if someone's coming from a consulting background, I think they do have a good starting point. But if they're not, then if they're from finance background, I think it would be helpful to refer to some case study interview books. You don't have to go in as depth as consulting, because that's a different role profile, but just building that muscle on how do you structure problems helps. And then whatever, I would say that's one part of work. But the second is whatever industries you have worked on, I think it's very important that you go deep into that. And say if you're working in investment bank, you already have access to research reports, analyst research reports. So that is your edge in a way, if you can access all of that and read through those materials of how they are framing it. I think reading those analyst research reports really help in thinking of your investment strategy, or like investment thesis and risks. And third, I would say is, at least if not regularly, you don't read news regularly, during the interview process, it's important to read what's happening. So those are the 3 things. And on finance sides, personally, like I had done internship in corporate finance, so I think that gave me a slight bit of head start. But otherwise,
which company was this?
Deutsche.
Deutsche.
Yeah. But But otherwise, if you don't have any finance background, I think again like CFI Institute is there. There's mergers and acquisitions or website. So those are really helpful.
Got it.
So and you can like those websites are as good as that you can download sample models from there and you can play around with those models.
Got it.
Yeah. No, I think both have largely covered it. I think at Kedaara it's more similar to what you described at Apax because we typically don't have cases when we interview or when even I was interviewed. I think the stress is more on what you've done in your past and can you sort of really understand that. So it's more about rigor and curiosity. And when I say curiosity is because let's say I worked in consulting, right? And in consulting the cases you have is one part of something and then your module is also one part of that, right? You have cement company, our case was logistics cost optimization of cement, and I was doing let's say inbound logistics in that. For if someone asks me what's your view on cement industry, I have not done that as part of that case. So you have to be curious enough to really understand that industry as a whole. So for me, a lot of my prep was if I worked in one or two industries in more detail and I want to talk about those in my interviews, then really understanding what's happening in that industry, what are the industry drivers, revenue drivers, cost drivers, etc., and pick maybe one or two companies that I really like that I can talk about in my interviews. And also a bit about valuations. Let's say if you have to invest in a company, never say DCF. To advice of anyone who's out there in a private equity interview, never say DCF.
Why?
So one person in our fund, used to say if someone says DCF, that person is rejected right now. Because in your classes you hear a lot about DCF, but in private equity, I have never built a DCF model. I don't know if you guys have in your.
I have not built either.
Yeah. I've built one, but I mean, depends on not a traditional sense, but if
you would have done leverage and all. Yeah.
No, so different industries. One
If
specific industry I did. You'd have to build a DCF model as well. But traditionally, like the sectors we have mostly invested in, none of them required a DCF model.
So it's more about multiples, and I think most private equity funds in India work based on multiples. So if you have an understanding of, let's say in this industry, this is the multiple that you, let's say you're covering financial services, then you need to know price to book is the multiple to use and what's the right range of price to book that you would give to that company. What are the multiples that public companies trade at, and all of this more for people who come from finance background. I think that's really expected out of them, that they would know. People who are in investment banking, they should know this in and out. If you're coming from a consulting background, even if you know it's a good to have, not a must have. It'll just add brownie points to you. If you're coming from a consulting background, what's really tested is your thinking. Your depth of, you said I worked on this case and this was the impact I had. You can throw large numbers, I increased profits by 2x, 3x, whatever. But what did you really do? What were the challenges that came up in that situation? Did you have any client interaction, any tough situations that you handled? That is more important versus saying I improved the EBITDA margin by 200 bits, right? Those are the things which are not important. What is important, you actually did. And can you understand the industry? If someone were to say, is this an attractive sector? What could be the risks, like, Aman said, or what are the positive side in that sector? I think understanding that is more important. And I think the biggest thing, like Divyansh said earlier, whether, when we recently concluded a round of interviews, there was one guy who was really, really good, right? But you felt, he's not a guy you can work with, right? He's very sharp elbows, more I than we. You would not want to work with him in a team. There's a term in MBA, it's called RG. I don't know how many of you understand
Relative
it.
grading.
Yeah.
What is that? Sorry.
I don't think it's we can chat offline. But you don't want to work with those kind of people who are just about me versus us as a team.
Right.
So I think some of those softer aspects also, like he said, EQ. Like I think IQ will only get you to a certain point. Beyond that, it's all EQ. So like Divyansh said, I think that's really, really important.
That's a very good.
I think the best part, what he said is most important, is what I think is something you have to put extra effort in, is knowing your CV very well and knowing in and out, because everything that's written in your CV will come back and bite you don't know how.
Yeah.
So the point where he said that he was working on one aspect of a cement company, I mean, his role in 3 months of that case, let's say, would have never required him to go look at the financials of that cement company.
Yeah.
But that's what's gonna test you, because then they might just ask him what are the other companies in this space. So how are they valued at? What's the differentiator? Your role did not require you to do that, but it's like he said that curiosity and rigor. So it's basically those are the two things that your job did not require you, but to get the next job, you really need that.
I think
And
those
it's
are
very
the
important.
differentiators. Those are the differentiators. You know, everyone, you know, would know their cases, you know, what they worked. But do you have that thing of going beyond? If I have to, you know, if I'm getting into a private equity job, I'm doing investing. And if you are, say, you know, I knew for 2 years I wanted to do investing. If you knew that, then when you were doing your case, did you think कि मैं इस company में invest करूँगा या नहीं करूँगा? So that will really test you.
I agree. And इसमें फिर like for someone like who is just getting into P, like all these interviews which are there, did you also like refer to any resources as such which helped you crack your P interviews, or
so when I was doing my private equity interviews, I was on campus at IMA, right? So 2-3 things I referred to. One was, let's say I was preparing a certain sector. For me, that was, let's say, cement. Then reading through research reports, because IMA, we had a Bloomberg terminal, we could access research reports. So, you know, reading through the analyst research reports, referring to my past cases, etc., etc. I think that was one important part. Second, because, you know, I was doing MBA, I have finance courses. So going through that in, you know, very detail, you know, what is FCFF, what is FCFE, you know, if something changes in account statement, what happens to the other thing. I think that was very, very important. The third thing, and I was very fortunate, you know, there was a course in my college at that point of time called Applied Value Investing. There's a guy from Nalanda Capital, which is a very, very reputed, you know, public market firm. N.C. Shadri used to take that course. And, you know, that course was about public market, but the framework was very, very similar to how we also, you know, industry, company, management, valuations, risks, etc. And the framework is pretty standard, right? So that actually, I think, helped me a lot, because I went through that framework and, you know, applied to some of the things that I was talking about. I think those are the 3 resources that I relied on, you know, when I was preparing.
Adding to that, but you can also expect like questions like, if I give you $100 million today, where would you invest? So be prepared for those questions as well.
Yeah, and I think related to that, you know, some people, you know, ask, you know, do you invest in public markets? You know, what do you do with your, like, how it will start is what do you do with your money, right? You know, you will be in some job earning a lot.
Yeah.
If you say mutual funds, then, you know, why, if you are into investing, why not, you know, explore stocks?
Yeah.
If you say stocks, then which stock did you invest in? You can't just say random numbers, because what price did you enter at? What price is it now? How is the company done? Those kind of questions will come.
Right.
Yeah, I think the 101 is to basically have 2-3 stocks that you want. This is a very common question. In every 10 interviews, you'll be asked once at least this, and then you have to defend why. There, the thesis and risks and your control over valuations has to be very clear.
Right. So these questions, like if I were to give you $100 million, where would you invest? Matlab, iske answers, like how do you guys give usually?
I think the way to think about it is to talk about industries and spaces you typically know, and not give like ideological answers, but actually give tangible answers. This industry, this company. And it's better if you draw it from your prep work, from your experiences, from the industries you have worked on, because you'll be able to talk through more about it. Or it could be the stocks that you've invested. Maybe you invested like 5,000 rupees today, wish you had 100 million, you would have invested in those. So I think it has to come from your experience. Either it could be investing, either it could be your work, and it has to be a tangible answer with a name and with the industry and a stock.
Yeah, you can't say like, you know, I'll invest in GenAI because it's the hottest thing right now. But if you say that, you have to really read up about it and, you know why you are saying that. Or, you know, if you feel that your industry that you worked in is not very attractive, you know, it kaun karega isme invest. You can say, you know, while this is an industry I've prepared on, I don't believe it's a right time to invest. But if I were, you know, to talk about this, I can talk about this. I feel this is a good industry to invest, but I haven't prepared as much on it. I know high level themes. So you should be calibrated with, you know, whatever you say, qualify as much as you can so that you don't trip up on something.
Makes sense.
I think one thing is very clear. I think no need to fake it. They'll easily catch you. It's always okay to not have answers or not know something, and okay, you can always say, okay, that's something I should have like known about. I'll go and read about it. That's a good thing you pointed, but don't try to fake it, because they'll catch it, and like that's a red flag. Yeah.
No, of course, I agree. And Kartikey, for you, how many rounds were there at Kedaara?
So similar. Mine were, you know, few were on call and few were in person. So I had flown down to Bombay for a day. I think I had some 7-8 rounds that day. You know, similar, you know, everyone sort of mid to senior in the fund would want to meet with you. So yeah, it was similar like that.
Got it. And again, 30, 45, 1 hour.
45 minutes to an hour. Yeah.
Got it. Fair. Cool. And also, like, for someone who's also preparing for interviews, like from your perspective, from like an interviewer's perspective, also an interview's perspective, if they are asked about how do you evaluate a company, so how should they answer? What are some of the parameters they should check? And since you guys are doing that work day in and day out, what would you recommend them if they are asked questions like evaluate this business opportunity? So क्या parameters check करोगे?
Yeah, I think I would talk about the structure first, like how can you structure your answer, and then within that parameters would vary depending upon which industry you're evaluating. But I think the first thing would be market. Is it an attractive enough market? And that would be typically like how the industry is growing, and then within that, and when you look at each of these factors, you just not have to think about like what's going well, but what could go wrong as well. So first you analyze the market opportunity, like is the industry attractive, if there are tailwinds, what is driving that growth, what could be the risks to this industry, is there any existential threat? For example, in tech services you could talk about Gen AI, which people are talking about could be a threat. So you need to first form a view on the market, look at these parameters, then you come to the asset that you're looking at, and that asset, basically the company you're evaluating, you would see how well it is positioned in the industry. So the way you determine the positioning of the industry, it could be you look at their market share, it could be more qualitative aspects of why they win, why they lose. In industries where your customers are more concentrated, for say IT services firms, there you can actually speak to those customers and get sense on why do they win, why do they lose, how satisfied their customers are with them. So you look at like the company's positioning, and here you have to figure out why are they differentiated, like why this particular company. You could come to an answer that there are like 5 good companies, all of them are equally well, this is a space I want to grow, and this is the bet I'm getting today on the table. That could be a view you take, but you need to be very clear on why this company. And then once you have done that, then there are other aspects to how you think of your investment thesis. Then you have to think of, okay, you invest in this company, but what are your drivers of value, or what additionally you can do over your whole period of 5 years to increase, like to grow the company exponentially more than it would grow on its natural trajectory. So is M&A a lever? Is entering a new geography a lever? So you think of the value creation levers, and also I think it's a good lens to apply when you are actually investing in a company. If you also apply a lens that tomorrow I'll have to exit that company down the road, what could be the potential exit options for you? Because it could be that maybe you are investing in a company which is too large, and when you are about to sell, it's just nobody who can buy that sort of company. So this is the typical way you structure it, and each of these, whenever you think, okay, what is good, you also think what can go wrong, so that you can think of mitigants for what are the risks.
Right.
No, I think completely agree with whatever Aman said. I think just adding a couple of points. I think on the industry side, you have to also think more structurally. So, is it, let's say, for example, a cyclical industry, right? Then, let's say cement is cyclical. Then at what point of the cycle are you entering? Whether you want to underwrite that kind of a cyclicality or not. What is the industry structure? Is it oligopolistic? Do the customers have a buying power, or are you really dependent on your suppliers? Is it linked to global, chemicals industry? You are affected by what's happening globally. So some of those industry level nuances you should also really be aware of. And some of it can also translate to financials, right? Say what's the industry level return on capital employed, and that will inform how much multiple you are willing to pay. If it's a fast growing industry, higher OCs, you can pay a higher multiple. Some of those things you need to really know what about your industry, what are the typical multiples, and why you would want to pay that kind of multiple.
Right, makes sense. And since both of you also, Divyansh and Kartikey, you also like take interviews of people and you hire. So I'm sure like there might be thousands of resumes and CVs which you might be getting, or even people reach out to you on LinkedIn as well. While filtering, like before even selecting the candidate, like there is a filtering which needs to be done. कि इसका interview लेना है कि नहीं लेना है. What are those criterias? Like how do you filter the candidates, and is it basis their of course educational qualification तो आएगा ही, but what kind of educational qualification or what kind of things you are looking for in a resume when you filter these candidates?
Yeah, no, I think maybe Divyansh can also add, but it's not the most perfect way because you may miss out on some candidates that way, but the first level filter is always education and company you have worked at, right? We hire from all your IITs, top IITs, then let's say DU and CAs, right? That's the typical sort of education background, and CA rankers, typically those are the
And DU, which any specific colleges?
So Stephens, SRCC, LSR. I think
Okay.
those are the 3 colleges that we usually looked at. Then what companies you worked at, and there it's largely consulting, banking, and other private equity funds. So consulting, your McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Carney, LEK, etc. as well. Banking, typically front end roles. There are a few of them, but vendors, Morgan Stanley and a few others have those front end roles even at pre-MBA levels in India. And then other private equity funds, other, let's say, domestic funds or other similar funds which are out there. Sometimes they are also looking to shift. So those are the typical sort of first level filter that, and even within that, because consulting pool is really large, and we usually work with headhunters, so they typically have what was your rating in your firm. So if you are well rated there versus not, then you would be interviewed on priority.
What are headhunters and what's their role in hiring?
So in this industry there are only 2. So most funds work with one of the 2, and they are the ones who would be So because from our team we can't go speak to all candidates and get their resumes and schedule everything. So those are the people really who would speak to all the candidates, get their time availability, set up the interviews, etc. etc.
Got it. And if someone wants to get into P or find these kind of opportunities or vacancies, like let's say if Blackstone or if let's say Kedaara or any of the fund is hiring, so should they just be active on LinkedIn, like reach out to people who are working here, or should they reach out to headhunters, or what would your advice be for these kind of people?
Yeah, I think every fund has a different style.
Yeah.
Earlier we used to, some years we may just do it all ourselves. We may just reach out. Earlier we used to. Now I think mostly we go through one of the recruiters.
Okay.
And
it's either Michael Page or Native.
Yeah, anyone.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's also, you have to sometimes be careful of the style in which you follow up. Sometimes you may be a very good candidate, but your style of following up can become irritating for someone and could be taken the other way as well. So while LinkedIn follow up, just if you have a connect, for sure. If you don't, you can always see that if you write politely and ask for follow up, 9 out of 10 times people will reply, we will reply. But in case we haven't replied, let's say for a day, and you replied, we have 3 messages from you, I mean, that can be taken incorrectly. Or if we've told you that we are under consideration, no need to follow up multiple times.
Okay.
Because people will get back to you whenever the process is. Following up won't help over there once your CV's in place.
So do you advise these people to reach out to the headhunters also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Strongly
And
recommended.
how can they do that?
I mean, go search for the name of the headhunter, see who is working in Bombay, ask them, are you looking into, or if not, then they will connect you to someone who's working on hiring for the specific roles that you're looking for. And then just you find those 1 or 2 spots, and then just be in touch with them, be nice to them, and they'll alert you about the right opportunity.
And even they'll reach out to you. So all these people, they have a network of who's in sort of McKinsey, BCG, Bain, how many years have they been working there, and so they have their own network, and then you can also reach out to them.
Yeah.
Got it. Fair. One quick question here. So PE के जब hirings होते हैं तो consulting and investment banking is the most preferred industry.
Yeah.
If people are working in, let's say, management trainee roles at companies like ITC, HUL or Aditya Birla Group, is that also does that add on the CV, or is that also okay to get into a PE, or उसके बाद IB या management consulting में जाना होगा and then only PE में जाते आएगा?
8 out of 10 times you'll have to go to PE or consulting or banking, and then comes.
Achha.
8 out of 10 times. I mean, there are always
Okay.
exceptions, but 8 out of 10 times. You
Yeah,
have to do that.
I agree. I think because the pool is so large, you have to have some criteria to limit it.
But tell me one thing, तो banking और consulting में ऐसा क्या तुमको सिखाते हैं जो मतलब
It's
PE
not
में
about,
जाते हैं?
it's not about what you're
is that?
taught there. It's a signal. Eventually तुम्हें Stephens या SRCC में क्या सिखाते हैं कि BCG hires from there, right? But it's about whether it's a filtering mechanism. So and Blackstone also does it. We've also done it this time. We've gone straight to IIT also, this time to hire. And the experience has been good. We'll see. They've just come on board. So let's see how it evolves. But it's a signal, right? That you were the top performer in, let's say, an IIT or a DU. And that's how you got into there. They do teach you some skill sets. Basic Excel, PPT. You learn how to think about companies. You learn interacting with, let's say, if you're in banking with some management teams, or if you're in consulting with clients, you'll have that basic skill set in place. I'm not saying you won't get that in a management trainee role, but it's about where the best talent from campuses is going, and you would want to go there to recruit.
Yeah. So if I were to ask you this simple question, what are the top 3 skills which you think a person should have to get into a private equity? What would those be?
I would say IQ as a basic thing. You
Okay.
need to be above it. Then what I talked about, curiosity and rigor. In terms of whatever you've worked on, that is very important. And third is EQ.
Okay, got it. So all of these would be soft skills, like
No, but IQ is a hard skill.
Hard,
Right?
like,
IQ is a hard skill.
technical.
And second, rigor and curiosity. I would say it's a mix of
Right.
hard and soft.
yeah.
And then EQ is purely
Got
soft
it.
skill.
Fair. Is it also because most of the founders or the MDs or partners are from, let's say, the IIT background, or let's say these kind of colleges? That is also one of the reasons that they prefer hiring from the alum network. Is that also one of the reasons?
I think on a broad scale, yes. Because let's say if I am from a certain college and I start something, I will have a bias for hiring from that college, because I believe in the quality of people that come from there. I would connect with them, relate to them, I think. But overall, broadly, I think people used to be like that. I think now the world has taught us to prefer diversity. And I think every organization is now realizing that people coming from different backgrounds have come together, take the best decisions. So I think everyone starts from those biases and then evolves, and like as an individual and as organizations also, everyone's moving towards believing that diverse team is better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you guys mentioned that like 3 statement modeling, or let's say what is the linkage of this particular transaction on all the 3 statements. Those are like some of the hard skills which are required. You also mentioned you were asked these kind of questions in the interviews. So Divyansh, this question is to you specifically. Like, I have seen a trend that at least, like, now it has changed, but at least let's say 3-4 years back, now these skills are taught to a CA and CFA very well. Like in our curriculum, we know how to build a model, or let's say how to analyze financial statements and all of that. But still, why do you think that people from IITs or engineering background, they were preferred in private equity as compared to CAs or CFAs?
See, I think it's just there. I think I agree with the previous point where I mentioned that the first set of people maybe who started the PE shops in the country, they were probably MBAs who had an IIT background. So when they come back to India and start their PE shops, the first place they go to is, let's say, they're in Bombay, they'll go to IIT Bombay. Or if they're looking for a pre-MBA role, and if they're looking for a post-MBA role, if they are from the Harvard, Stanford and Whartons of the world, I think they want. Because a lot of European funds, you will see none of them are MBAs. Because it's just that the founders were not MBAs, and that's why the requirement of having an MBA is not there. But in India, the industry evolved in such a way where they just MBA folks are the ones who had the LP connects, or they came back, started the India private equity office, and then that's how. Then I mean, that's the only reason where there are a lot of IITians in these analyst associates roles. Then I think once the pool where they used to hire from, McKinsey, BCG, Bain, they started hiring more CAs. Then they automatically saw that, okay, amongst the CV shortlisting set that we have, the CV sets, there are enough CAs, maybe just try. And that's how the CA rank holders got a chance to interview for these PE firms. And I fortunately was also one of them, and that's why I got the role. I was also in a way an experiment for Blackstone.
Are they happy with that experiment?
I mean, they've hired 4 or 5 more after me, so I think yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So, but I think that's how these things change. I think that's why, like I said, we are more than happy to hire someone from an investment bank and then see that how it plays out. It's just that it started out with, but there's no such thing that IT folks are doing better modeling or no financial concepts better than CAs and CFAs, because you rightfully said that we are taught that in our curriculum. So no reason for us to not get a shot at the opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd say though is that the question on how would this thing impact the financial models, etc., the 3 statements, I would say at least we are not looking for that skill. It's a test. If you're a CA, you should know that, right? It's a test of how well you've done in whatever you've studied. I actually believe the easiest part of our job is the hard skills and the financial modeling. you can learn it on the job. Even if, I would very happily hire a person who doesn't know what FCFF means, right? As long as they are very good at thinking, their IQ is in place, their EQ is in place. So I'm not hiring for that. That you can learn very easily on the job. So, an IITian is as good a person as a CA, as a economics honors grad to have a crack at that job. So I don't think that background matters from that way. It's more of a filtering thing because just because you value your time, you can't be interviewing hundreds of candidates for one position. That's just a way to limit or filter.
I 100% agree with him actually, because I think we also do. That's why we don't have a financial modeling round. We don't want you to know how to model. We think that the firm will teach you that. But whether are you the best placed person to learn the model, and once you learn whether you'll perform the best is what we test.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's a very fair point. So, like you said, Divyansh, that there are like 4 or 5 people more who were hired like after you got hired at Blackstone, who are chartered accountants. And I think even like in other funds, I've seen this trend that now industrial trainee route, which is there now, that is getting opened in a lot of VC funds also. So do you see this trend shifting where like, do you think like these people would now be preferred or given an option to interview at least at the PE funds?
See, I mean, those who have had an industrial training is not enough, because if you see the number of CAs that the country produces are immense. So obviously with an industrial training, the easiest filter to have is rank. I don't think not having a rank will affect your career in the long term, but I do believe in the short term it does. Having a rank does give you an advantage, at least in the short term. A lot of more gates open up. I mean, for my example, like BCG would not have happened if I were not a rank holder, because at least in my term, all the 6 offers that were rolled out were to rank holders.
Right.
So I think
what rank you had, by the way?
10.
Wow, scholar boy.
You knew that very well. So I think it's just in that way. I think just the fact that it's a good thing that industrial training opportunities in such VCs or other investing spaces and investment banks and even consulting firms now basically give you the exposure of what can be the next big thing that you can sort after once you complete your CA. So the best part, I think it helps in a wider set, is it increases awareness.
Right.
I think that's the best outcome that can come out of these things, that so many CA students in the country will know that there are opportunities like industrial training in such firms, and there are job opportunities in such that lucrative, high-paying jobs that are available. If I do CA, if I work hard, I can get those. So I think that's the best part of these positions.
No, makes sense. Let's talk about the exit opportunities for someone who's working at a PE fund. So what next? Like, let's say I've worked at a PE fund for 3 years or 5 years of my life. So of course MBA is one option which you guys mentioned in the pre-MBA roles. But what are some other exit opportunities? If you can also give some examples of your friends or anyone. So what are some exit opportunities?
I don't think MBA is an exit option. It's just a 2-year break where you try to come back again. So I wouldn't call MBA an exit option. I think I would love to hear from you guys what you have seen in terms of exits from private equity. But like, at least as far as I know, I've hardly seen people exiting.
Okay, so you're saying like those who enter, they stay in the PE.
It's like Hotel California. Once you leave, you can't.
They stay and typically it's a job which is very like intellectual, like intellectually stimulating. So if you like that kind of job, I think it just gives people a kick to do this sort of work, no matter how many hours you put. But I think it's what I have seen, at least in people around me. And second big reason for people to stay longer is your economics is also tied to that, because we talked about profits, etc. You see a cycle in like 6, 7, 8 years, so you want to stay long term. So it's like I have hardly seen like people moving out of private equity. Would love to hear from you guys too.
No, I think similar. I have not, people whenever, even if they leave, they go to some other fund. And for example, someone was senior at, let's say, or mid-level at a particular fund, they feel there's no space at the top, new fund enters India, they're completely starting fresh. So you feel there's more growth opportunities. So people go to that fund. So most of the exits within private equity are, to other private equity funds. On the rare occasion, when people completely exit the industry, it could be, let's say, senior management role at a particular company that you may want to be a CEO or a CXO at, but that's very, very rare. Or let's say some, once you retire, of course, you can have advisory roles, board positions, etc., etc. But given the length of the industry in India, there are not many people who reach that age of retiring from private equity in India. But the only possible exit I can think of would be, which is outside of the industry, would be, a senior management role at, some company. Very, very senior, CEO, CXO type of a role.
Like, doesn't like these people who are there in PE start something of their own or become an
Entrepreneurs?
entrepreneur? Yeah.
There must be. I can't think of any top of my head, but I think, I can think of one guy. I think he was from Carlyle or KKR. He started his own startup. I think there are a couple of VCs. It happens more often because you're in that ecosystem. I think PE also, there are a couple of people who've done their own startups, but more at the junior level, not really at the.
Got it.
I think like you said, most want to stay back.
Yeah.
Some can go to, if they really like their portfolio, one of the portfolio companies, there are often people second to a portfolio company, and then if they like it, they can continue over there.
So second, as in, what is
Let's say we have 10 portfolio companies. For in one of the portfolio companies, there's some strategy implementation that needs to happen, or let's say some acquisition that you have to do. Make sure, like a similar like a consulting case, but from an investing route, you go there to help the long-term strategy and growth plan of the company. So let's say you start 1 year and you like it, you can just continue over there. Like you said, startups, but not very frequent. That's the other option. 3, we very, very often seen like people move to other investing firms that can give you a more, entrepreneurial role where you're the second or third employee in the country, where just one partner who's heading India, and then you just join that position.
Yeah. Or you can, let's say, start your own fund. Let's say some people go into public markets. But again, within the investing sort of wider space.
From 2-3 year analyst associate role, I've seen people go back to BCG or McKinsey as well. So
is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Why? I mean, why?
Maybe not like some. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
It's not for everyone.
But,
Got it. Oh, this is strange. I didn't know this. So, when are you guys planning to start your own fund?
Whenever you give us $1 billion, Kushal.
Then to never know then. Cool. So this was super fun. Let's just spend a time on your typical day at private equity funds. So tell me, like, just a quick like one word answer. How many what was the time when you worked for the most number of hours, and like how many number of hours was the maximum in a day out of 24 for the 3 of you?
Yeah, I think for all of us it'll be the week before the IC.
Correct. It's
How many hours would that be?
I think to be very honest, you're working all the time except the bare minimum hours you need to sleep and like basic hygiene. I think like a week before IC. It's very lumpy. The 9 months of the year it's pretty comfortable and chill, but 3 months is where you're in a diligence or a live deal. It gets very rigorous, and then I think you have to burn even beyond the midnight oil and be at your best, and the hours are stretched. But I think it's just that couple of things, you're never alone, and the work will make it become very entrepreneurial, where you're not counting the hours, but you are attached to an outcome. Let's say an IC memo has to go out, or a deal has to be signed, so you're just working towards it, making sure everything's in place. So I think that adrenaline just kicks in, and so you stop counting the hours. You completely. That's why I said you're just working.
No, but
all the time.
What is the maximum number of hours you would have worked in a day?
Gun to your head.
Give me the number. In your entire career, not even P.
I would say I think my work hour was more intense in BCG than it was in at least.
So out of 24, what would that number be? 18, 20?
I've had a night out at BCG, so I can say about 18 hour, 20 hour.
I would also say ballpark, but that's not a regular day.
That's
a very
one day.
I think it's very similar, but again, it's just for that one that memo has to you plan to go at 12 and ends up 4 a.m. But I think it'll be very simimer for all of us.
And typically, like every day, how many hours would it be? Typical working day, 12, 14 hours a day?
I would say
lesser.
10 to 12 for me.
10 to 12, similar. Yeah.
So then, why do you act so busy whenever I message you?
I mean, that's a you problem.
Yeah, it's a reflection on you.
Okay. Yeah. And also, like a typical day at a PE fund. So you said that 9 months would be like deal phase. Let's say 3 months would be a little lean. So how would that?
I think I said the other way.
The other way.
Sorry. So 9 months. 9 months. You're saying like it'll be like normal.
Relatively.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
3
yeah.
months like deal phase, that'll be like
Stretched, yeah.
Stretched. So can you talk more about the 3 months experience? How is that
And I
entire
think also
experience
it's not
and all?
3 months at a time. Let's say it's 1 month, 1 month, 1
Correct.
month.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not 3
3
months.
is like spread out over
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
you
Yeah.
do proper diligence on 2-3 deals a year, so
Yeah.
that would be spread out
Let-
across
yeah.
the year.
And in this IC meetings, like so investment committee meetings, so there are like so how many people are usually there, and what exactly like
I think
happens
it'll
in
be
the
different
IC?
for all of us.
Different
Maybe
for
you
all of
guys,
us, yeah.
you guys can.
So IC meetings, as in every fund has an investment committee, and the number of people who are in part of that investment committee would vary from fund to fund. And some, maybe it's a small shop with like one person calling the shots. It could be one person. In some funds, it could be like 3 to 4 or maybe larger. So it's a wide range. And then in that investment committee meeting, IC members will be there, and then the deal team is there. Typically, 4 to 5 people, 4 to 5 member deal team is there. So that's the broad structure of the team.
Got it.
And you obviously share the memo, and then either it could be a walkthrough of the memo, or there could be question answers, like, or it could be a question format.
So memo is basically like thesis on the company. Why should you invest in this company?
Yeah,
And,
thesis, key commercial questions, and what do you think about each of those? How do you make returns? And then it's not just one IC you go to, but for one investment, maybe you go to IC 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, depending
Oh, okay.
upon
Got it.
what are the pending questions are there.
And are the founders also part of the
No,
IC
it's
meetings?
just the investment. It's just they are not
Okay.
a part of the IC.
Okay.
Maybe in some rare IC, someone wants to
Yeah.
wants the founder to dial in, but very
No, I think
hard.
for us it's slightly different. I think we have a 4-member IC, but that's largely our fund founders, and Windy, who's from CDNR. CDNR is a partner firm for us, so he joins from there. And for us, ICs are open to everyone in the team, so all of us can dial in, and usually most of the people dial into ICs, but the questions are answered by the deal team.
So typically, like, what are the duration of these IC meetings then? Like, how long one IC meeting would last?
1 hour, 1.5 to 2 hours.
Yeah.
1 hour is like ballpark.
Yeah,
Got
so
it.
it's a block of 2 hours. Again, it depends. If it's a initial first IC meeting where you're just putting a non-binding bid, it can be
Right.
like 1 hour. When it's a binding bid, I've seen ICs go up to 2 hours also, but it varies. Yeah.
Got it. Fair. Since we are towards the end of the conversation, let's do like something on a lighter note. I have like a couple of questions to ask all of you on a lighter note as well. What is one thing that you guys don't like about your jobs?
I think
I can't go for first day first show movies. Yeah, that's what I hate about it.
You're a big movie buff, right?
Yeah, dude. Like
Yeah.
if every Thursday night I want to go for a movie next morning, but it's a
Okay.
work day. I think that's the only time I feel I wish I was working for myself. I would definitely go for that movie and then go to work.
And you're a big Shah Rukh Khan fan also.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen on your LinkedIn and Instagram.
Yeah, all over.
Right. Cool. From
I think,
For me, go ahead.
I think it's more about the unpredictability. Like you can't make plans 3 months from now, or even like 3 weeks from now. So there's like
Yeah.
that unpredictable element to it, and it happens because you're such lean teams, right? So there's always some dependency. So you can't like switch off.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you three made it to the podcast. By the way. Yeah. I mean,
You had one cancellation before.
yeah. And plus, this guy Divyansh was also going to cancel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I think one thing that it's not like I don't like, but one thing that's missing
Yeah.
from Lodha, I feel, is a more of an operator lens or skill set. I think most people who come to to private equity have worked in either banking or consulting. You've not actually worked in a job, right? You've always been outside. And even private equity, while you own the company, you have complete ownership. You want to do what's well. You are completely aligned. But it's not like you're doing the actual work, right? So that's
Yeah.
where that secondment program, like Divyansh talked about, helps. You build that skill set and you build that empathy also, that while you're interacting with the management team, you're asking questions on monthly review to monthly review, but you have not seen it from their lens, right? So if you build that skill set also, I think it makes you a well-rounded
Right.
investor as well.
How I'll sum it up is like basically you don't manage a P&L for 3 years. If I think 3-4 years, if you manage a P&L, then you can become a good operator as well. You can go to become CEO. And if let's say 20 years we do this, we will not be ideal candidates to become CEOs in companies.
Yeah.
But 3-4 years if we had managed the P&L, I think that's the
Yeah.
big difference.
For the secondment thing, like, how do the conversations start? Like, you have to tell it to your bosses, or how do they happen?
Can happen both ways.
Both.
yeah, can
Got it.
happen.
And have you guys, any of you, have done like secondment stints or something?
I've done it for 1 or 2 months for a portfolio company. We just got
Yeah.
purchased.
Even I
but,
have done for
Got
one,
it.
2
So
months.
you then step into the shoes of that company and run
Yeah,
it
you
as if
closely work with
Yeah.
you closely work with the management team
Got it,
on
yeah.
whatever initiatives
Got it.
they want you to help.
I
drive.
mean, see, the secondment also has like specific targets why you're there.
Yeah.
I think for most of us, if we go together to a new company, I think it's to basically get the company and your investors on the same page,
Yeah.
build MI system, make sure that there's a free
So
flow
is
of
it more
data
like
sharing,
an
all of that.
entrepreneurial stint or like
You can
how
say
is it?
it's almost like some people do chief of staff kind of roles.
Yeah, correct.
It can
the
be
founder's
similar.
office roles
Yeah,
kind of a
can
thing.
be
Yeah,
similar to
it-
that.
Ah.
Yeah.
it
It
can
could
be
be very similar to a consulting project where you might get
Yeah.
a VC,
Yeah.
but you're getting someone from.
Makes sense.
The other though, like in Kedaara, especially like I have a colleague who's just gone, Saurabh, to one of our portfolio companies, and he has a specific 6-month stint there. And he's doing he has an actual title, he's doing actual on the ground job there. So that's also available, if you are actually
Got it.
interested.
Yeah.
What if on the secondment you guys like the company so much that you plan to shift there only? That might also happen.
Can.
It hasn't. I've not seen
Okay.
it happen.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone would. Very rarely, I think it is. If someone sees a part to becoming CXO,
Yeah.
I think all of us are too early in our career to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if someone sees a part to becoming a CXO, I'm sure there would be.
I think one thing people, get frustrated by, which I've seen, is that, in a consulting or a private equity, you're used to working with people who work at a certain pace, right? आज
Yeah.
कोई decision हुआ तो next step आज ही होगा.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
corporates, when you say कि नहीं वो अगले हफ्ते देखते हैं, you sometimes don't like that pace of working, the people you're working, it's a very different pace of life. So some people may enjoy that, but most people I've seen, of our backgrounds would not enjoy in that kind of an environment. That's
Right.
the only thing.
None of you answered work-life balance. I thought work-life balance would be one of the answers when I asked what is one thing you don't like about your jobs. वो नहीं है, like work-life balance is sorted for all of you.
Yeah, I think everyone finds their own comfort space over what is, work-life balance. The more important thing is to productively do what you really like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I really like movies and shows, I think it's a priority for me to take out time for that. I recently got married, so
Yeah.
I have to balance and make sure that part of my life is well taken care of. I'm taking out significant amount of time. It might happen that there is 2 weeks where I'm not getting enough time, but it's my job to make sure that the third week I make up for it and make enough good memories and plan stuff well in advance, so that I make sure that everything's falling into place. It can't be a straight line and there'll be spikes, but that's how life is, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
those, like I've answered earlier to you as well, that
Yeah.
those peaks and troughs, you balance them well.
Right. Yeah, I saw the wedding videos, man. I mean, I was just blown away. I mean, what a grand wedding it was. I wish I was there. I wish I get.
I did invite you, I think. Yeah.
The only thing on work-life balance I'll say is, like you said, as long as you're doing something productive. If you asked me this question in BCG, I think work-life balance would have been an issue, because there, if I'm spending 2 a.m. in the night aligning logos and answering comments on formatting, then I would hate it. But if I'm spending time on actually working on something that I enjoy, something that's actually productive and it's not wasteful, I don't mind that. So that what you're working is more important than how much you're working. At
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
for me.
Makes sense.
I think at least investing roles, inculcate that entrepreneurial spirit in you, where you are really attached to outcomes. They make sure
Yeah.
they do that very well, where you are very, very attached to the outcomes. So that's why I said, I think now I've reached the point where I completely stop counting the hours or why,
Yeah.
because also the quality of work is really improved. So the quality of work you do, I
Yeah.
think every day I feel, okay, I'm actually very privileged that I'm being able to do this.
Yeah.
So I think then I won't find reasons to complain, and I'll just look at the
Yeah.
greener side of things, and I think that makes me happy.
Yeah.
So that works for me.
Yeah,
So I
the
think
other
that
thing, like, I speak to a lot of friends, today's a Sunday, do you have Monday blues? I've never had Monday blues. So that's, yeah.
So, weekends are usually off only, or like how many out of the last 50? I know like exact number तो नहीं होगा, but out of the last 52 weekends, how many weekends would you have worked?
See, I think
tentatively?
work is also, a very flexible definition, right? Have you worked on those weekends as a normal work day? That would be very rare,
Okay.
right? But, are there 1 or 2 calls that you've taken on the weekend because you couldn't fit them over the work week? That happens quite often, right? So,
Right.
you're hiring for a portfolio company, the candidate is also part of a job, so he's only free on the weekend.
Yeah.
Take out an hour, do the interview in the morning, that's fine, right? It's not like someone will call you urgently and say, get on a call right now, and you have to get on a call at that point of time. There's flexibility there. Proper work on the weekend is very, very rare. In that time we talk about, maybe 1 week before the IC, you may do like 5-6 hours of work or more on a weekend, but that's at least for me, very, very rare.
What about you
I
guys?
think very similar to what he said. That around maybe like in those 3 months that I talked about the intense phase, I think there would be more than 50% of weekends, and that 3-month period would be working. So roughly, let's say 6-7 weekends a year you're working normally, but in the 52 weeks. So I
I'm
think the remaining
surprised
are pretty
because
free. Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of my friends are working at, let's say, consulting or banking. I mean, almost every weekend. There was a friend who was at BCG only. So 6 months he was at BCG. He left after 6 months, and the reason he left was every weekend was working for him for all the 6 months.
It depends on the case, right? If you got stabbed on a case where every weekend is working, then basically.
I've rarely seen someone at BCG work every weekend for 6 months.
Got it.
Yeah.
I worked in BCG.
He was from
on
my
weekend.
batch only, by the way. I think you would have interviewed, your senior would have interviewed.
Maybe.
Like, for example, if you're on a diligence, right, DD project at a consulting firm, you will be working weekends, right? But that's a 2-3 week thing.
Yeah, but I think they give you a week off also in between duties
Ha,
or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in PE jobs, what happens is that whenever there's an IC, that's the period where you might work weekends, and then there's a cool off period where there's no like live deal as such, and then you move on to the next one. Versus in consulting, it could happen that maybe if you're on a project, if you're in a short strategy case, maybe 4-month case, and there's like firefighting all the time, and you have SCM, which is like steer co with the senior people from the client side every Monday. So if that's how your partner has scheduled it, you might end up working every weekend.
What is Steerco?
Steerco is basically a check-in which you would do in a consulting job. Steerco is basically a check-in with you, which you will do with senior people from the client side. So you will present on progress on whatever is happening. So if you schedule that on a Monday, then your weekend tends to get bad for that period of the case. So I think even within that, it really depends upon, for example, I think I've been very lucky on the work-life balance front at my current firm. Like, culture is very good. People really care about it. And even at BCG, I had a very good life.
Yeah, very similar. Like, so
I think
at
BCG
BCG, I've
improved.
never worked a weekend in a year.
What are you saying?
I never worked
Seriously?
a weekend at BCG.
I also hardly work weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you travel a lot, no? I think.
I don't know. I
At
did
BCG,
not.
when you were
I did not travel a lot. No, and like I said, over here also, I think for all of us, if let's say you, there's something that comes up also, if you have weekend work or if you have something personal that has come up that is very important, you can always flag it up front, and people are very understanding, and then the teams where someone else can pick that up for you, and so there can be transitions, but it's not punishing as such. I think it's the stigma that it's very intense, rude, rough culture, all of that. It's very archaic. I don't think that exists anymore.
And to what he said earlier, like he was saying that you're never alone. So even if it's an IC, it's not like that I'm the junior most member of the team and I'm the only person who's in office working. You see your VPs there, or you see the partner. They are also working and spending time. So you don't feel like you're one person, and you understand that, right? You have that sort of everyone's doing it.
Correct,
so
makes
that
sense.
really helps in your morale also, and and then you respect each other. They are also doing it. So that's another.
I think we make an event out of it. We're ordering pizzas in office and all that, playing music and then taking breaks. So I think
the only thing I'd say is though is you can't come into a private equity job saying that weekends I will not look at my phone.
Of course.
That while it's good, people give your time, you have flexibility. No one will ask you to get on a call right now. But you can't say ki weekend I'll shut off, and I'll only start on Monday. That you can't.
But I think that
In every
I think
job,
today no, you can't do that.
You can't do that in any job. I think,
Many jobs I've seen my friends do that. By the way,
I have seen, but I think the thing is, again, if you want extraordinary things in life, then you can't do it by doing ordinary things.
Right.
So I think that applies for all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean that applies for all the jobs. How frequent would be travel as a part of your work? Like, do you travel frequently? Consulting with, of course, it's a lot. But in PE, what is that frequency?
Yeah, I think varies, but mostly, less for deals. Also, you travel. I think portfolio you end up traveling. So next week I'm out 3 days. Bangalore, Hyderabad, etc. I would say once every 2 weeks, at least that's the average for me. I don't know how it works.
It's very dependent on the portfolios that you look at, where they are. So very, very skewed towards that. If let's say you may end up with 2-3 portfolio companies, what you're working with all in Bangalore, so then or in Delhi, then your frequency you travel. I think most of what I worked with ended up in being in Bombay, so my travel was very restricted to the management meetings for potential investment opportunities that we are evaluating. So not as
And I
much.
think post-COVID, everyone's just more comfortable with Zoom. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of pre-COVID travel has actually moved to Zoom.
Have you
So
guys traveled internationally because of work at
Yeah.
PE funds? Which countries you've traveled?
Travel to Thailand.
For work?
Offsites, but,
Offsite, yeah. That's what.
offside, man.
Yeah. Offsite, so yeah, we
Offsites,
have
so,
international offsites every year. So that's
Yeah.
for work. I think, for example, if you're in tech services, you'll end up traveling to the US. So I'll probably go in next couple of months. But
Yeah.
apart from that,
Offsites you have every year, is it? And these are what?
For us, yes.
7 days or
2 days, man.
2 days, that's it.
for us
you
it's
can
3-4 days.
You can make a
okay.
big event,
Yeah.
but
You can make like ahead and after the offsite, you can like probably.
What kind of places do you generally travel to for offsites?
I think we have a good offsite culture. So last year we went to Turkey. Before
Wow.
the year before that was Amsterdam. In the past, the firm has done Tokyo, Munich, Thailand, of course. So Kedaara people really like their
Right.
offsite. So we go to a new place.
My
every-
previous company's offsite was at Nasik. We had gone to Nasik. Divyansh, for you?
I think because of COVID, I think a lot of travel was restricted to India, so we had to do
But
Goa,
talk
Delhi,
about your
Bangladesh,
BCG offsite,
BCG,
no?
I think BCG offsite was also all in India only,
Yeah.
but one in Udaipur, one in Shimla, one in Goa. In that 1 year in BCG, I was there. I traveled to Thailand for training, then Goa for India offsite, then Udaipur and Shimla for 2 of my case team offsites.
Wow.
So made the best of BCG.
When you used to work then?
Balance some.
in between the offsites.
Amandeep, for you? Yeah.
I've done like 3 offsites. One was in Mykonos, then Dubai, and one London.
Oh, wow. Which firm? Like Apax? only?
Apax.
Wow, I think this is fancy now. People would be now more inclined towards applying at Apex. One last question. So
I think
again,
just a big warning: don't plan where you apply for basis offsite.
Basis offsite, yeah, that's
the worst thing.
yeah, that's the worst
biggest career mistake you can make. Yeah.
yeah. So career. So mistake is the next question. So what is one silliest mistake you guys would have done in your corporate career? Not only in P, but any time in the last 5-7 years of your career. What is one silliest mistake that you're like, यार shit, ये क्या कर दिया मैंने? मतलब I'm just like.
I think most of us must have made a mistake of at least one at one point, not sending an email with an attachment, missing an attachment. That's a very common mistake. I
very
think most of
common.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think replying all when you're supposed to only hit reply. I think that's another. I think it's a rite of passage. Everyone goes through that. So I think standard mistake.
Checking who you're sending email to like 5 times before is
Yeah.
helps prevent those mistakes.
Got it. And like only emails में mistakes किए, बाकी like nothing, or maybe decks, corporate decks or something.
I mean, if you want us to say कि font size right नहीं थे.
If you're really being that anal
Yeah,
partner, then
right,
yeah,
sure.
Align at top, align
Yeah.
align to the right.
distribute horizontal. Distribute
Dispute
vertical.
whatever, yeah.
No, of course, not in those details. But yeah, I think this was super fun. I think a lot of people would get a lot of insights about the PE industry. But thank you so much for doing this. Any last piece of advice or message you would want to give to all the viewers who are watching this?
No, I think just it's great that you guys, if you were still watching, that it's great that you had
Of course, they are watching. Of course, yeah.
So that you took out time and are really happy to take out time to learn more about what's out there. So the only thing is just try for whatever works for you, but do not get upset if there are not opportunities that are not coming your way. Don't compare opportunities, don't compare jobs, don't compare salaries, don't compare positions. Just everyone has a different pace, and everyone it's a 30-40 year career, and everyone gets eventually where they
Yeah,
want.
that's what I always say. Like 1-2 years doesn't matter. You may take couple of years late, you're couple of years early. Long term, everyone reaches where they are meant to be. And I think PE in India is a really sunrise industry. Most funds are increasing their allocations for India, so there's a long game ahead. So don't
Right.
worry about 1-2 years here or there.
Yeah, very good advice.
Yeah. I think very similar to these two folks, but that's what I also personally apply to myself. That whenever I look at my career, it's not like a sprint or you have to it's a long marathon sort of view.
Yeah.
That it's 30-40 year game. Think 1 or 2 years here or there don't matter. And sometimes like you don't know what's best for you. You might think that this is the job I really want to do, but over time you figure out it's something else. So sometimes it's better not to attach yourself to like some idea of a goal, but actually give a shot to whatever you're doing and just go with the flow. I think that
Yeah.
sometimes works very well.
Right, absolutely. Cool. Thank you so much once again. And I hope you had fun as well doing this. I hope I could do justice to your time.
No,
I'm sure everyone is going to have a lot of fun. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for having
us.
us,
Thank
Kushal.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.